Ladies and gentlemen, today's program is the second program after a new committee has taken over yesterday. Just last week, we had whole day conference on Union Budget 2021 on direct taxes with clause by clause discussion. Today we are having 3 hours of detailed discussion on Union Budget 2021 on indirect taxes, GST and customs. Without taking much time, I now request Chairman of Banking Bank, CABT to escort our Chief Guest of today's program, Srimati R. Bhagya Devi, IRS Principal Commissioner Customs and Central GST, and also Dr. B. Murali Krishna, Additional Commissioner of State Taxes, onto the dais. I also request Vice Chairman C. Srinivasti to escort our speakers in Rajesh Kumar onto the dais. I request Chairman to welcome our Chief Guest by presenting the floral bouquet. I also request Chairman to welcome our special guest, Dr. B. Murali Krishna, sir, by presenting the floral bouquet. I request Vice Chairman to present floral bouquet to our speaker, CATR Rajesh Kumar, and welcome her. Thank you. I now request Chairman CABT to kindly render his welcome address.
Thank you, Miriam. Happy morning, dear members, learned viewers online. Friends, I feel honored, privileged, and humbled to take over as 52nd chairman of this largest branch of ICI, Bengaluru branch of ICI. Yesterday, the transition process happened. Good number of our members witnessed that. The tagline for the year 21-22 is Empowering Excellence through Jnanarjane. Jnanarjane is acquiring knowledge. In that process, today we have arranged the budget amendments or budget proposals on indirect taxes, basically GST and customs. Friends, today we are fortunate here to have as our chief guest Madam R. Bhagya Devi, IRS Principal Commissioner of Central Taxes, Audit Division of Bangalore West and Mysore. He is consented and he is here with us. Madam has an extensive experience in central taxes. She served the country more than 30 years in various capacities. More than that, happy to inform you all that she is from Karnataka. It's a pleasant surprise to all of us, as she served a good number of her service in other states of Karnataka, other states of India, particularly Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, and now she is in Karnataka. And when we made a request, we happily agreed to share and enlighten the various issues of GST to our members, and also to share the central CGST's expectation from our members. On behalf of Bengaluru branch and on behalf of all the members assembled here and viewing online, and on my own behalf, my hearty welcome to Madam. As a special guest on this occasion, we have Dr. Murali Krishna sir with us. He is popular with all our members because he used to share the knowledge on SGST or GST on various issues like GST's related all the important clarifications, or he is an expert. I can say he served in various capacities in all the departments of central taxes, including VAT. Even during VAT, he used to come to our institute and share knowledge in various seminars and workshops and studies activities. Today we are fortunate to have him here. Hearty welcome to BV. Dr. BV. Plus, we are fortunate to have our own member, Rajesh Kumar, and very well experienced on the subject. He was a part of formation of GST and the various books. When ICI was involved, he was part of that. He was part of writing various books on GST. I think regularly they are releasing good number of GST books, even during VAT and service tax Zamana also. He used to write various books and share their knowledge among members and in various other forums also. Today we are fortunate to have him here. Ably supported by my managing committee members, Vice Chairman Srinivas, Secretary Divya, Treasurer Panindra, and all the members. Hearty welcome to each one of you. Today's program coordinator, CHWD also is with us. Hearty welcome to that. And with that, the intention is to acquire knowledge. Without much ado, I hand over the mic to our MC, Secretary Divya. Over to you.
Thank you, Chairman, for your kind welcome address. Members, before we move forward, I would like to introduce all of you. Our Chief Guest, Srimati R. Bhavya Devi, IRS Principal Commissioner Customs and Central GST. She joined department during August 1969. She qualified IRS in the batch 1989. By qualification, she is Master of Economics. She worked as technical member in National Anti-Profiteering Authority from July 2018 to December 2019. She qualified Indian Economic Service exam during the year 1984 and rendered service for about 3.5 years in Department of Economic Affairs. She has got Finance Minister Gold Medal Award as Srimati Kaushalya Narayan Memorial Gold Medal in the year 1992. She has also got Appreciation Certificate for Special Distinguished Record of Service by President of India in the year 2014. She has rendered service in the department for almost 31 years, 7 months in Indian Customs and Indirect Taxes. With this very brief introduction, I welcome you to today's program now. We have a special guest with us, Dr. B.V. Murali Krishna sir. To briefly introduce, he has completed Master of Veterinary Science in the year 1995. He joined as Assistant Commissioner of CT during the year 1997, Deputy Commissioner CT in the year 2006, Joint Commissioner CT 2013, Additional Commissioner during the year 2019 for CT, and has worked in various capacities of departments like cross-verification, enforcement, assessment, administration, appeals, e-governance, etc. He has worked with greater responsibilities in rolling out of ECAs and E-UPAS GST implementation, E-invoicing. He is also a member of Big Data Analytics IIM, member of IT Grievance Redressal Committee Karnataka, Nodal Officer for GST and E-Way Bill, Nodal Officer for IT Committee GST in Karnataka, State Training Coordinator Karnataka. With this very brief introduction, I welcome you also today. I now request CA Siddharth to kindly come forward and give a brief introduction about our speaker.
Thank you, Divya. Good morning, one and all. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the new team of Banjo Bank of ICI. And now I would like to introduce the main speaker of the day, Mr. CA Rajesh Kumar DR. He's a BCom, LLB, FCA, and visa qualified, practicing chartered accountant since 2002 in the field of indirect taxes. He has completed his schooling, graduation, and CA officership at Kumar, and later moved to Bangalore for his practice. He is presently practicing as a chartered accountant in the area of indirect taxes in Bangalore. Was earlier one of the senior partners of Indirect and Associates Chartered Accountant firm. He has written many articles in the field of central excise, service tax, VAT, and GST for various professional journals and presented a number of papers in various seminars and workshops. He has also authored many books jointly with other authors in the field of GST and GST Audit, GST Ready Reckoner, GST Tariff, Practical Guide to Service Tax, etc. He has been a faculty for different programs conducted by ICI, addressing members. He has also been invited as a guest faculty at colleges to address the students. He is also invited as a resource person by NACIN as well as Central Taxes Department and State Tax Department for giving lectures to department offices. With this brief introduction, I'd like to welcome Rajesh Kumar sir on presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Siddharth. Members, light symbolizes brightness and prosperity. It removes the forces of darkness and gives us positivity. So, let us light the lamp and begin today's program. I request all the dignitaries on the dais and managing committee members and CEs to kindly come forward to light the lamp. you all. I now request our Chief Guest, Srimati R. Bhatia Devi, IRS, Principal Commissioner of Customs and Secretary, to kindly address the cabinet. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning to all. First of all, happy congratulations to Mr. for taking over as chairman this day. And instead of chartered accountants, first of all, I thank both of them, Siddharth and came to invite me. And it's not an unfamiliar institution for me because in Chennai, I was well familiarized with the regional office of Institute of Chartered Accountants. I was studying Mr. Rajesh Kumar there and Murali. In fact, I used to visit quite often to the Institute of Chartered, not only to on budget changes or on service tax or something like that. It was not at GST. Also to address the chartered upcoming students of the institute. So it's like homecoming for me. Now coming to today's session, like the budget we are talking about. And also I find very familiar to commercial tax because in the year 1884 I cleared as assistant commercial tax officer. But I had to choose whether I had to take up Indian Economic Service or join as assistant commercial tax officer. Then one of the IAS officers suggested if you want to do civil services, better go to Delhi and join Indian Economic Service. As all of you know, Indian Economic Service, most of the postings are at only at the initial level, 3-4 years you can stay in the states. Otherwise, you have to move to Delhi. So if you want to write civil services, then you better go to join Indian Economic. That's how I joined and worked in Planning Commission. And as a Planning Commission, worked here in Bangalore as a project evaluation officer. Used to have the watershed development projects those days to see how the central government projects were implemented at the state. And my office was in Basalmuri. So I was here for 3 years. Then I decided to write civil services and join the exams. Today I am here and served 30 years in this department. And it's been a pleasure working with you. As all of you know, the Honorable Finance Minister, Finance Unions Minister has released the budget this time. It's been a historical budget. As you all know, today the numbers are very few because it's all virtual happening. So it was a digital budget. So the first time historical budget because we all went through COVID. For the last 1 year, the COVID has gone, and we can say post-COVID era, though people are saying the second phase is going to start, we say we can step into the post-COVID era. This post-COVID era, when you see that the last 1 year, we had a lot of issues. And personally, I'm not only an officer, I'm a mother, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, and you have so many issues. Especially when you talk about today, also somebody was saying, maid coming back home was such a bliss. So it is we went through this 1 year. They say in abroad countries, they don't have maids, they have to do all the work. We had to do all our work. So things changed. Things changed to that extent, the entire system had to change. And in fact, I would say COVID was a blessing. It was a blessing because it has taught us so many things. So many, though at the beginning we started cursing, what is this, what is happening, but it has started so many things. And you have learned to live, work from home. Now I know, some of the projects have started, builders have started saying that work from home projects. I think somebody has started in total environment, or somebody has started a workspace, you have a beautiful space. And they're saying now if you buy a house, also buy an office in the house. So many things are coming at it. So looking into these changes, the government also has brought in drastic changes in the budget. Especially when we talk about the principal objectives of this government was Atmanirbhar, being self-reliant. Another principal objective, making India. These are two objects which have been continued in this government. Keeping this in view and keeping the repercussions of COVID into view, the government introduced the 6 pillars. The 6 pillars like health. Why health was so important? Because vaccination had to be done. We had to get our vaccination, put our health into the perspective so that the health of the economy also improves. Then we came up with the physical and financial capital and infrastructure. How do we improve our infrastructure? As you all know that the economy has bad, the stock market didn't do well, Industry was not doing well. In fact, as GST officers, we all know that how much revenue we lost for the first month, April, May, June. In fact, I was additional charge of East, and we had a target of 6,500 crores in the East. And then they said we will reach the target. We said in the month of January, and when we did an analysis. But at the end of March, no questions were asked because we couldn't reach our targets. We couldn't. I remember, in fact, all of you know that we go and now those days itself we used to ASMP 13 we issued, and we asked the bank, whatever amount is there in their accounts, please pay it as a tax if they have not paid. I remember one lady coming to me and telling me that she was doing for Audit textiles. She had a home next to her house. She had taken one small house, and she was saying, "Madam, ನಾನು advertisement ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ Audit textiles ಅವರಿಗೆ advertise ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದೆ ಅದರಿಂದ ನನಗೆ ಈಗ advertise ನಿಂತು ಹೋಯ್ತು. ಬಟ್ ನನಗೆ 10 ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, 10 ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನು ಸಂಬಳ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು. ನಾನು ಸಂಬಳ ಕೊಡಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ಉಳಿತಾಯ ಇಲ್ಲ. So I have to continue to do that. So if you ask me to pay, how do I? So I mean, so such things come to us, and so we also are considering, because there are, like as tax officer Murali agrees with us, our hands are tied to some extent. We cannot, say that okay, you don't pay for this month, you pay next month. But to some extent, we can be also lenient. So taking this into account, the budget also infrastructure, they started saying that we have to create employment opportunities. Many had lost it, so that was the one of the principles. Next is inclusive development, and then they said that you have to. We have seen the problems of migrant labor, how migrant labor suffered, how they lost their jobs, when they can come back, whether they had the jobs or not. So this also has to be taken care of. Then next came the human capital. Human capital is always important because without human resource, I don't think anything, any economic can be. So that is also one of the concepts which government took over. And then comes the innovation area. And we should be proud that 2 of our companies have not only come up with 2 vaccines, but they have also supplied to other countries. So that is a proud moment for us. So we have to encourage such companies. We have to encourage R&D. And today we talk about space, and we say that one lady there, I don't recollect her name, the Bindi. We feel so proud that an Indian woman there sitting there in space, and giving fame to the country. So these are the things. So take into all account, and the government also wanted to develop R&D. And then the last principle is minimum government and maximum government. And I'm sure all of you will be happy because we started faceless assessments in income tax, we started faceless assessments in customs, and soon we'll have faceless assessment in GST probably. And it's almost started because whatever we are doing is because online transactions as good as this. So minimum, we don't want any interference. So that kind of a thing has to be done. I remember when I joined service, registration, he has to come, go and meet the superintendent. Madam Superintendent, how many times you have to roam around to the superintendent to get one registration done? Or you get online, or you get your refund. Today, you sit at home and get your registration done. The other day, a friend of mine came from income tax and his colleague was doing some, so he said his relative was doing registration, but when I went to GST portal, I told him this is the thing, they have asked us on certain documents. You seem to have not submitted this document. Unless you clarify, you will not get it. So there is no need to come to office. So these are the things which have come with minimum governance and minimum interference by us. And now, and though the deficit now it is being 9.5 and 6.8, though it is high, but taking into all the consideration, I think this deficit seems to be okay. And coming to the tax question, now basically we are all interested in taxes. What are the taxes? Yes, in income tax some changes have come, these direct taxes, and I don't know, not much interested in income tax except that I thought I felt very nice that I don't know how many people are going to be after 75 years, but they can see that citizenship, some benefit. And one thing they have done is close the assessment before, not after 3 years. And that is a one welcoming feature I thought in the case of income tax. As far as customs is concerned, same thing, taking into faceless assessment into consideration and bringing Make in India principle and Atmanirbhar principle. They have changed some tariff rates. They brought in changes from customs policy and customs act. So changes are. The crucial thing is our indirect GST, indirect taxes GST. Now GST, when you talk about GST, so there are 16 changes in GST, 15 in CGST and 1 in IGST, and Rajesh I think will go into detail on these issues. So what has happened in GST? I think many of you, there are 3 retrospective things. And one retrospective, everybody is happy. Section 50 retrospective amendment, everybody is happy because thank God I'm now to pay only interest only on the ITC, only on the net liability. not on the whole. And that was understood. Many courts have also come up with these results. It is understood, and what is the benefit has been, it has been already discussed in GST Council, and that is now been put on paper. So that is one benefit which is given retrospectively, which is appreciated by everybody. But when it comes to Section 7 and Revenue Schedule 2, everybody will raise up hands and why retrospective? Clubs, and then there is an apex court judgment, and why this retrospective? Because there are certain things which have to be, because this was done in case of service tax. So whether it was applicable to GST or not, so now they have said now club members will have to, now anyway will have to, these are all proposals, budget proposals, this is not an act, this is not a notifications have to be yet to be issued. So unless and until the notifications come, we will not be able to clearly read them, how to implement them. So we will have to await the notifications. And next comes the Section 16. Section 16 now, many people have been raising voice saying that Section 16 now GSTR1, how am I responsible? Na katti aitu tax, na idu madiyatu, na file madiyatu. I mean supplier madiyalla andre how am I responsible for? So why should be I held responsible? Why should I? Because you see, and yesterday also I was discussing to one of the CAs who were addressing this. What has happened when you see that if you go to the GSTN portal and you see the percentage of GSTR 3B filed versus GSTR 1 filed. GSTR 3B almost we are reaching to the 100% thing, that is at least 90 to 95. GSTR 1 note, very few are being filed. Why I don't understand. I mean, as auditors, you should be able to convince the people to file. You file GSTR 3B, please file GSTR 1. And then when I was talking to one of my friends, he was saying that sometimes GSTR 3B, when we file taxes, we file to that extent of what is available in the ITC. Adannashti use ಮಾಡಿ cash liability cut out ಬೇಡ. So those invoices I don't show it in the GSTR 3. Some sort of an adjustment. ಈ ತರ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂತ. So why government comes saying that? See, when I file a GSTR 1, somebody else is taking credit. So the government on one hand loses the ITC, on another hand doesn't get tax. So I am paying you without even getting the amount I have to realize. When we introduced the GST, we said everybody is eligible for ITC and there is no restriction. You know what? When central excise service tax order, we have so many restrictions on ITC. You could not take ITC on this, you could not ITC on this. Now there are no restrictions. When I give you so much of liberalization, why do you comply with it? Why don't you comply with it? We are only asking you better compliance from the trade. So for a better compliance from the trade, auditors are responsible. So I think more responsibility will lie on you now to say that there should be. That is why the reason Section 16 amendment has come. And I mean the proposal, I'm talking about the proposal. Now, then we have this Section 74 and 129, 130. I'm sure Murali Krishna will be dealing with that more relating to the e-way bill. And one thing is dealing. Because I know that a friend of mine had called me the other day and said, Madam, ನಮ್ಮ consignment ಹಿಡಿದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ SGST officers are ಹಿಡಿದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಶಿಫ್ಟ್ ಇಂತ ಹಾಕಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಬಟ್ ಅಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಬೇರೆ ಕಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. There are two things. So when I want from Chennai, if I want to send to Mysore a consignment, or no, sorry, I'm saying that if I want to send, like I am from my supplier is from Chennai, but he has to send a consignment to Mysore, and suppose that unit has his own unit in Samaras in Bangalore, and if you want to send it to Bangalore, instead of sending it from Chennai to Bangalore and Bangalore to Mysore, they send it to me. So there kind of be shipping and billing addresses could be different. So I am shipping and my billing address is a different place, but the place to be shipped is a different place. And that kind of an action, immediately when it does it, so probably it has to say it is billed to so and so, but shipped to so and so. Otherwise, the problem will be clear. But then what happens? So this is a real situation I am telling you. My friend called me and said, Madam, I'm consignment is SGST officer. I spoke to the SGST officer, and what is it? He said, no, madam, it shows to well, but it is going to down. So then I can't allow it. A penalty has to be tax cut. And what that man says, the person says tax cut madam. So I can pay the penalty by tax. So that is the reason why this has been introduced now. So dealing the tax part and penalty part. But then come to the penalty, will be imposing 200% penalty. So then you will raise us questions how to do it and all, how to go about it. I think probably you will deal it in detail as to how to do it. Then one major change is 83. So we had for the last almost 6 months, enforcement agencies At least in CGST, I don't know how GST is very active from day one and enforcement. That's a different issue. But we were given a special task that enforcement activities start nodding, and you have to realize what, because the revenues were down. When we started doing 9,000, believe me or not, many of them GSTs issued fake advice. And I was telling Mr. Shetty also, some of the auditors were involved. So a lot of revenue was lost. And we couldn't realize that revenue. Though we have realized 550 crores, much of the revenue couldn't realize because we couldn't trace the persons. So when such things happen, then the government wakes up and says, I think you have liberalization, now you have to try the loose ends. Here your time order, introducing some sections. So that is how then 83, now say provisional attachment. So now you must be saying that, because in section 35 and 44, auditing is not necessary. Some of them say that should not be removed, audit especially are enacted. But I understand that it was a proposal by the trade. Trade wanted, because we are not in a position to get audited, or it could be expensive for them, or they didn't want it. We ourselves will do a reconciliation. Some kind of, so trade appears, the amendments with section 35 and 44 are had. But they are saying it, I can file a return, annual return without getting officially audited by it. But that doesn't mean that you cannot get audited. You still have an option to get audited if you want. But that is one proposal I am told trade is happy. So maybe auditors may not be happy about it, but trade is happy, and probably these things have gone by the trade, and the government has come up with this. And provisional attachment, and that is what I'm saying. Once you are saying you are not responsible to sign because attachment now it can be anybody, any person. So one has to be careful in dealing with the document. So they say that when you sign the document, be careful. Do not sign blindly. Do not give this, because the benefit, whenever you talk about GST, that dual benefit. When you talk about ITC benefit, you talk about tax benefit. So I may not be paying tax, and I may be taking ITC without paying tax. So these are to curb these benefits. Some of the drastic changes have been brought about in the budget. Then in section 151, there is also a lot of issues are going to be raised on that. Power to the commissioner to call information from anybody, anywhere. So these are also being questioned now. So we'll see how the notification will tend and how it will come out and how it is going to be implemented. I think in coming days, once the bill becomes act and notification will be known. These are as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is and an explanation has been given in section 75 to call that, what is the tax to be paid. You can also take whatever is declared in the GST account to be taken as tax. As I was telling, many people file GST or PB without filing GST account. So what they said that then later we find that GST or 1 is higher amount is being shown without not showing GST or PB. Then those amounts have to be taken for taxation purpose. So these are the major changes. If you see overall the CGST changes, when you see the overall, this is not come over a day or over a cup of tea or something. This has been taking the trend for last year. We are stepping into the fourth year. July will be completing 4 years in GST. How the trend has worked, how much compliance is there to the trend, how many is there? This kind of a thing, taking into consideration all these things, these drastic changes, some of the drastic changes have been brought about. And we were talking about, Krishna also was telling, we are discussing now technical research to argue. And I say, I'm here not to say that we are also human error is possible, you are human, I am. Now really, that day, in fact, in my Chennai, I have a own house. My servant there calls me and said, I am plucked it go home. ನನಗೆ ನೋಟಿಸು ಇಲ್ಲ, ಡ್ಯೂ ಡೇಟ್ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಸಮ್ ಆನ್ಲೈನ್ ಮೆಸೇಜ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್. ನೀವು ಇಬಿ ಬಿಲ್ ಕಟ್ಟಲಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಪ್ಲಗ್ ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರ ಇಲ್ಲ. What will you do? Next day you will go and pay the EB bill because you manage light ಇಲ್ಲ. Without light you can't do anything, you can't run your grinder, you can't run your washing machine. You can't do anything at all. So you will go and pay it with no questions are asked. Water tax. I was surprised to know this. Water tax ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಮನೆಗೆ ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಹೊಸ ಮನೆ ಇಲ್ಲ ಮೇಡಮ್, ನೀವು ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕು. Water tax has nothing to do with the connection. ನೀವು ನೀರು ಬರುತ್ತೋ ಇಲ್ಲ, ನೀವು ಕನೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೀವಿ, water tax ಕಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀರಾ? So for 4 years I paid the water tax to get a connection. Till today I have not got the connection, I have applied for it. So now whenever the state, when we have some state government introduce like EB bill or water tax ಕಟ್ಟೋದು, now we will cut this, we don't even raise our voice. ಯಾರು ಕಟ್ಟಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ಈಗಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ನೋಟಿಸ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ವಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ನೋಟಿಸ್ ಯಾಕೆ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು 15 days ಟೈಮ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು 15 days ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಐ ಮೀನ್ ಐ ವಾಸ್ ಡೌನ್ ವಿತ್ ಕೋವಿಡ್. ಯಾರು ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಯಾರು ಕೇಳಲ್ಲ. So just like this is another tax, payment of tax, because unless you pay taxes and you as auditors convince the trade, tell them that wherever we are right, wherever they have to pay tax. Yes, I understand there could be some officers saying that the other day somebody has issued a notice without a din. Now what is that? How much pressure we also as officers have? You I mean, no, you are not supposed to talk. Now, you WhatsApp message WhatsApp message. So you are not supposed to talk, you are not send a message, you are not supposed to issue a notice without a deal. So the pressure is also on us. Like as officers, we are doing a lot of things. And today, as an audit officer, I am saying it, like in COVID, we say even today, some of the large units, I am always leaning to the small industries. Small industries, market in the offices, but and the whole body. Not necessary. Whatever documents is, one day come for you and very mad is good. Now large units, when I have to do audit, when I have to have a large scale of audit papers, I have to go to the unit. How long we will say in the reason of COVID and say that burglary? We also have to show our targets. We also have to do our work. We know that. And today's system is such that ನೀವು ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮದಲ್ಲ, ನಾನು ಮಾಡೋದು ಕಮಿಷನರ್ ಪ್ರಿನ್ಸಿಪಲ್ ಕಮಿಷನರ್ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬೋರ್ಡ್ ಚೇರ್ಮನ್ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ everybody has an access to the same system. Whether I am working, whether I am in office, whether I am logged into the system, actually because of COVID, thanks to COVID, in fact, as CGST officers, we have to log in only in our systems, specifically given in the office, which cannot be brought home. And I mean, we have to be in the office. We at least because of COVID, they have given us the remote control. I mean, on a laptop, on a desktop, login madak agutte. Otherwise, on account of lot of because hacking happens and all, they said we will not do. We will have a specific systems. You office ge barbeku, alle log madbeku, alle land ide clear madu. So you have to necessarily go to office and work. So how many hours I have logged in? I mean, privately ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡೋದು ಗೊತ್ತಿರುತ್ತೆ, login ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ. I mean, my nephew other than he kept on paper and went. Login ಮಾಡಿ ಒಂದು paper ಏನು paper ಇಟ್ಟಿದೆ ಯಾರು ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ ನಾನು ತೆಗಿಲ್ಲ. He will think that I am there on the system. I'll go out and come and that's it. So I'm telling you, we are that kind of a pressure what we have in private. Number one, so we are also under a lot of pressure. So whenever there are changes comes, I think it is the job of auditors to tell the trade. So this is what it's a welcoming feature, and wherever it is a welcoming feature, please comply with whatever it is, whether it is a taxation, whether it is a penalty, whether it is interest. So we have to do. Today, penalty, at least those days when I was a commissioner of the service tax central, penalty 25,000 ಬೇಡ 10,000 ಹಾಕೋಣ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಅದಷ್ಟು ಇತ್ತು ನಮಗೆ, ಆ ಲಿಬರ್ಟಿ ಇತ್ತು. ಈಗ ಡಿಸ್ಕ್ರಿಷನರಿ ಪವರ್ಸ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, 15% ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 25% ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ 100%. No discretion powers. Those days we had a discussion. I used to say, come, I used to invest service tax. You are not one of my friends. I said, you pay. Penalty, I see that the penalty is there for you. So we got it paid. Today we can't even do that. ನೀವು ಬರಲ್ಲ, ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ಮೇಡಮ್ ಹೆಂಗಿದ್ರೆ ಪೆನಾಲ್ಟಿ ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗ್ತೀರಾ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಅಂತೂ ಪವರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗ್ತಾರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ ಹಸ್ ಬಿಕಮ್ ನಾಟ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ದೇ ಆರ್ ಸೆಡ್ ಆ ಡಿಸ್ಕಷನ್ ಪವರ್ಸ್ ತಗೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಐ ಮೀನ್ nobody has passed now, so we are doing. So this is overall on CGST. My only request to all audit officers is please engage with the trade, tell them as to how to be done. There's nothing to say that you have lost your powers because of section 35 and 44, because you know that auditors, in fact, I was saying in my auditor's office, because of 35 and 44 amendment, nam kelsa jaasti agutte. Because if you are audited, at least I would have said, okay, somebody has audited and chartered accountant signature ಇದೆ ನೋಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದ್ರೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಒಂದು ಇದು ಇರ್ತಿತ್ತು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಈಗ ನಾವೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ನೋಡ್ಬೇಕು, ನಾವೇ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. That pressure is actually increased on us. The burden is increased on our officers. So because we have to check the annual return thoroughly. So that is one request I had to all the auditors since I come to the action. Then coming to the IGST has one amendment. Then you say that, see, because earlier also when we had done a development commission on list ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ, ಇದು services ಆ services ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ SEZ officer used to assign authorized operations ಅಂತ ಇತ್ತು, ಅದನ್ನ reintroduce ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. It's nothing new. So you have getting the benefit only it is an authorized operation. And IGST refund, I should tell you, risky exporters ಅಂತ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. Risky almost every month each commissioner gets at 5-6 exporters. ಏನಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಆ ಸಪ್ಲೈಯರ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ, A supplier yaru ಬೇರೆ state ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. Now in the department says, no, you have to find out whether the supplier has paid tax or not. Because this person who is exporting, he has been taking refund. So these are the verifications which come. So that is what I am saying. These changes which has come in this budget, I would rather say it is not, sitting in four walls and discussing. It was because of certain things happening. Whether it is fake invoices, whether it is risky exporters, whether it is IGST fake refunds, then the whole changes now. So that's what they said. And remittance, foreign remittance, 96B is already there. So ನೀವು auditor ಹೇಳಿದ್ರು 96B ಅಲ್ಲಿ introduce ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ section ಇಲ್ಲ. So how can be there a child without a parent? I mean, you will also put it. So they said let us have a section also amended so that it gives strength to the 96. So this is what, when you talk about the 16 and 36.4 link, everything was there. There are certain amendments to take care of the rules. There are certain amendments to take care of the fraudulent taxpayers who have been deceiving the government. So overall, if you see the budget, it is a good budget because of these things. The circumstances are forced to bring it. You may think it's a drastic things, but it was necessary for you. So once the things is streamlined, everything settles down, probably there will be a little more liberalization, little more, because we all know that, we all say that when I am a honest taxpayer, why should I penalize just because somebody else is? In fact, what happened in the government also, we say that. Now, 10 ಜನ ಇರೋದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು 5 ಜನ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 5 ಜನ ಸಂಬಳ ಸೇಮ್ ಸಂಬಳ ಕೊಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ, ಬಟ್ ಅವ್ರ ಕೆಲಸ ನಮ್ಮಷ್ಟು ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. So everywhere there is a principle, one principle, like you say that 20:80 by management principle. Other 20%, the maximum revenue will get 80%. So what we do is we concentrate at least on the 20%. We expect at least the 20% of the taxpayers who are paying the 90% of revenue comply madli anta. So compliance, if it is at least 90 to 95%, probably the government will be also more deliberate. So I once again thank Mr. Shetty having given me opportunity to, because you are the authority on GST, because you know the law better than me. You know how do we tell the trade, how do we ask the trade to implement. So again, I will thanking him and thanking the institute for giving me this opportunity. I will only say that please ensure that a better compliance comes from the trade. Thank you.
Members, it's a proud privilege to have Srimati Abagadevi with us. Thank you, Madam, for sharing some of the recent finance updates with us, and also the speech was very enriching for all of us. Huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Madam, we would also like to bring you to your kind notice that we take very strict disciplinary actions against CAs where we get the complaints regarding they're involved in some fraudulent activities of clients, and the institute is very capable enough of doing that. But sometimes what happens, some tax practitioners are involved in it and public treat them as auditors. They will not be a qualified chartered accountants. So even such cases are there. So we'll definitely do our best in compliance as you were requesting. We'll ensure that more and more compliance and more contribution to the society is done from chartered accountants. Thank you very much once again. It's a tribute to honor our today's chief guest, I request dignitaries on the dais and all the MC members to kindly come forward. Also request CA Siddharth Javadi to kindly join us on the dais. Members, we are very glad to have continuous support from Dr. B.V. Krishna sir, always to our Bangalore branch. I request all the dignitaries on the dais to honor him. Members, now the time has come for ending the inaugural session. On behalf of Bangalore branch, I take this opportunity to render formal vote of thanks for inaugural session. My wholehearted sincere thanks to our chief guest, Srimati R. Bhargav Devi, hired us for spending a valuable time in spite of a hectic schedule. On behalf of Managing Committee of Bangalore branch, on behalf of all participants who are present here, physically and both virtually, I submit a gratitude to you, ma'am. Thank you very much once again. I also thank Dr. B.V. Krishna, Additional Commissioner of State Taxes, for his gracious presence and being part of today's discussion as speaker. On behalf of everyone from Bangalore branch, my sincere thanks to you, sir. I also thank CATR Rajesh Kumar, our speaker of the day, for his valuable contribution to Bangalore branch programs. Wholehearted thanks to you, sir. I also thank CA Siddharth Javli for being program coordinator for today. Thank you, Siddharth. Thank you all, and now I request Dr. B.V. Krishna sir to give us updates on e-way bills in the light of proposed amendments. Over to you, sir.
Good morning, everybody. And it's my privilege to be in a physical and a virtual room. So after March 2020, I think 2021, this is a month, and traveled to Mangalore to give an address on recent developments in GST. and is another, that's actually more of physical interaction. And today, happy to share yours, both the physical, and a couple of charter conference and office space area, and more on online. And moreover, what I was saying now, thanks to pandemic and COVID, the whole 2020 is more of a webinars and web training, day and day out we are conducting. In fact, I should place it on record and appreciation to all the tax practitioners, consultants, and stakeholders in overwhelming interactive session, particularly web. Can you imagine 1,034 participants were there on 4/9/2020. 4/9/2020 when we wanted to launch E-invoice from 1/10/2020. So we conducted a webinar and online participants were more than 1,034. I was the host and 310 people on YouTube. In fact, the people who were registered for the online event more than 10,000 because the capacity of the web event only can be more than 1,000. So that's the outreach the online has, the media has. So we should be very careful and should be very candid in what actually we are doing, and also we are interacting. And the topic what actually they have given today to me, and I looked at before when the institute called me and asked me to deliver a lecture, I said, okay, this is budgets. And I saw the brochure. It was limited to UA bill and pertained to the recent proposals and amendments. And I was aghast. Because it's a very, I know the intricacies of the amendment. As man said, is to make better compliance and also see that the litigations are reduced. And some changes have been brought in, and it's a ongoing efforts. And when we had a implementation of section 120 and 130 and read with 138 and see, let not go to the sections and 107. There's the major changes where actually the UV bill is a come into force. And you all should be proud being Karnataka and being state. We are the one we gave UA bill and nationwide concept for movement of goods having value more than 50,000, which was earlier 55,000 in a erstwhile package. We used to call we know it as UA bill. That's it. From 2018, April 2018. So non-carrying of a UA bill along with a document. Simple. And what's the biggest difference between the UA bill and another E-invoice? I didn't find any much. See, always people confuse. See, in the UA bill we have party and party. So party is nothing but invoice details. That's it. Whatever invoice you have, that's invoice details. It should have party. What is part B? It is nothing but a vehicle update. That's all. Without part B and part A together, only it is UA bill. Without part B, only part A, it's not UA bill at all. That one should ingrain into the minds of people. Everyone says the party, everything is perfect. Fine, the party is perfect, but actually party is not there. Means to say why I'm trying to emphasize. I've worked in enforcement and appellate and also in e-governance activities in the last 10 years. Please understand, and we put the technology for the law perspective. Please remember, even if you are carrying an invoice, physical copy of the invoice could be duplicated and replicated original as it is maybe. Without having UA bill, if the value is more than 50,000 rupees, it's not a valid transaction at all. It's as simple as that. Transaction will be valid for you for accounting purposes, for the purpose of compliance. Without UA bill means having part A and part B, having a vehicle updation, it's not a valid transaction at all. And is liable for rejection, then leads to detention, seizure, confiscation of goods and conveyances, so on and so on. And we start that particular intersection, section 16 and all that. Then coming to the levy, we will go to the 128. What it says, notwithstanding anything, that it starts with the non-obstante clause. I think coming to legal terminologies, I think Rajesh will explain more intricate interpretation. I'll not go to that now. So when we say there also, there is a one word called equivalent tax and penalty. See, that started getting confusion to everybody. What is it equivalent to tax and penalty? So when the transaction was rejected, when the particular documents are rejected, it's as good as you have to levy one-time tax, 1 plus one-time penalty. And moreover, when you pay that on online, so whatever the tax element as you pay, that should not be appropriated for your PP and all so on and so forth. So we have brought technologically, you have to pay by TSC 3 and 7 offset and all that. Let us leave that. And now many people have adjusted the penalty and tax initial time. So the tax and penalty, that word was giving a lot of confusion and not clarity to many of the tax professionals or the tax payers. Then in wisdom, they thought, okay, let us take it out of the tax element. Then what we did? Instead of 100 rupees, we said 200 rupees penalty. Hashtag. Name change madla. Danda hashtag. Isn't it, Rajesh Kumar? We didn't change the.
More rigorous.
It's not more rigorous. Oh, penalty is the hashtag. Andre 100 plus 100 na 200 rupees anta edited. I think that is a proposed amendment. And also another issue, we can take it further there. Whether the 120 and 130, they have split into different parts, and because there was conflict, there are so much of judgment. I'll not go to the which judgments came in the way and all that. But more clarity, detention is issued and the levying penalty and the confiscation 130 has been de-linked. That's a proposal. That's what I want to say. And also whether some of the, even yesterday, some of the officers were asking, sir, whether you have to determine under 73-74 demand and recovery to see that that amount is recovered. My dear friend, demand and recovery 73-74, what are you to want? Unpaid tax, wrong refund, or wrong availment of ITC, with fraud or without fraud. With fraud is 74, without fraud is 70. Further, before notice, after notice, how much penalty interest is there, let us not go to that. See, that is basically, you want, see, many they fail to understand the principles of GST implementation. We have differentiated what is assessment, what is audit, and what is demand and recovery. You might have seen under section 65 also, it is an audit only. Examination of records, books of accounts, that's records, and returns in detail. For what? Whether the tax to be due or wrong availment of ITC or wrong refund, all that. That's only verification. Coming to that, they will file an audit report within 3 weeks of commencement of the audit. Means even there is a demand in that. That doesn't mean that it is a demand to be recovered. If the taxpayer comes on volition, he comes and pays the tax and all that, there is no further 73-74 invoking at all. 73-74 will be invoked only when a legal demand will be booked. So for 73-74, if you look at the assessment provisions from particularly from 59, 60, 61, scrutiny of return 62, non-filers assessment 63, URP and 64, it is a protective assessment, summary assessment. All and 65 and 66, all will flow to the 73. So till then, every taxpayer has an ample opportunity without having a legal demand. They can pay and they can close the issues within a reasonable time, what they are given. Means even if you look at the section 78, 80, 78, initiation of proceeding, they say within 3 months it should be initiated from the date of service of the order. So you have an ample time. But officer, if you want to recover early, has to make a note and say that in the interest of revenue, why I should, they should give a cogent reason, like reason to make a early recovery. So in that way, 129, 130, they want to make it very independently, not connected with that. But any 120, 130 offences, if it is in demand booked, wherein such information, certainly the audit officers, the proper officer can take it for further adjudication under 73-74 independently or together with the other issues also. That also please know. See, why I'm trying to tell you, I'm in this taxation the past 23 years. I didn't find much difference between the different enactments except little procedural changes. If you ask me GST in a bank, the basic premises used to claim input taxes in the state of Karnataka. But in GST, we are claiming pan India. Wherever the transaction happens, okay, this input claim is there. So that is the fundamental. That's what. There are so many procedural, technical issues are there. The fundamental crux is that. So that's a small change in proposed amendment, boundary 29, 130, and another under section 107 for filing appeal. What they proposed is if there's any seizures, detention, such orders are there should be 25% of pre-deposit of the amount. It could be amount and tax, interest, penalty, amount. So 25% pre-deposit on that's one proposal, which is earlier it is 10%. We might have seen, particularly in case of non-final assessment appeal, I think the officers are using they have paid 10%. That was the close. And the limit also there, to a certain extent was amended earlier. More than that cannot be recovered. It should be 25% of total. Now it is pre-deposit. If there is intention or seizures, that's another amendment has been proposed for UAP. Volition or detentions. So other than that, there's much scope for me, they have given for me in this particular aspect. And other amendments, already Rama has spoken in overview. I think Rajesh Kumar will be in detail. I think, and I feel as a taxman, always I say, Alva, now in one measures, other go category. And then, in the germane for a complex, no mistake in a later review. If you look at the crux of the every amendment, you will understand, oh, there is a real concern and the genuinity, and also to overcome so many judicial problems. Section 7, 8 now, they would have 7 amendment of code. Yoshia Mada, Arsenal service tax, and adjudication, HMD, now, GST Kumar laws evolve. Now, always you go back to the VAT regime, case regime, sale of goods act regime. We bring all those. So to preempt all that, I think they have overtaken. And one of the beautiful amendment in section I watched, it was close to my heart. You should have been there quite long back. That is section 50. That's really the noteworthy which we will take. But one thing you remember, my dear friends, for honest taxpayer, default of payment of tax. And the inputs are there, or matter 20%, victory 24%. Remember that. And fraudsters recipient and collide arbitro. Now detection money, input and tapa material Nuru plus minus I work is what I work for, I work to 18%. Nuru minus I work to Illa, Nuru into 24%. It's not a small money. Am I right, Rajesh Kumar? It's a big money. I request any taxpayer or any practitioner, don't let us not get into life. Those who want to do, let them do. I know the data because I'm sitting in a Mahiti Kanaja. It's an information treasure. I am working on that. I know when we write a filing, we see the database. It's aghast. It is astonishing. It's too fraud out there. You may think that illness and animal problem with that. I know. Let us not go to that. Number problem is your new problem, other problem is your other number. Really, Arthashastra is saying, Vaparam Global Action. Show the enactment you bring man. Prime is ahead of law. That's what I have understood in the world of time. With that, let me just take over you to some part of E-invoice system and leave a bill. I'll not take much time with the help of NIC. So NIC is a service provider for GST for e-vehicle and E-invoice. Remember that. They are from Karnataka and who work for in the past 10 years in all our e-activities. With all that, I just take you some few slides. Then understanding, and as a project coordinator during 2013, I'm immensely pleased to say and happy to see with your all cooperations, you could able to see our state e-governance level is at 100% level with 100% e-governance competence. Today we are struggling to give registration. We giving all authentication, no other authentication, 21 days, 30 days. My dear friends used to give registration during that within 2 to 3 days without much issues are there. Let's look at that, how actually we have traveled. This picture, even the day, from the day one I'm showing to everybody, still it is like this. Still we are grappling. The no one is trying to understand, simple. Sir, I registration and tax collect ಮಾಡಿದೀನಿ ನಾನು 3D ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು GST ಒಂದು ಫೈಲ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಇನ್ನು ಏನಪ್ಪ ಕೇಳಿದೀವಿ ನಾವು I ask anything other than that. Once you take a registration, once you have collected the taxes, you file your return, file with GST 1, and you file with GST 9 or 9C. Am I right, Rajesh? Have you asked anything more than that? So when you're carrying it goods on during movement of the consignment, you say you carry it. ಈ ನಾಲ್ಕು ಕಾಂಪ್ಲೇಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಷ್ಟು ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಇರೋದಿಲ್ಲ ಇನ್ಫ್ಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಸರ್ಚ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಅಂಡ್ ದೇರ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಸಪ್ಲೈ ಇಸ್ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಇಸ್ ದ ರೇಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಟ್ಯಾಕ್ಸ್ I'll not go to that. If I'm making one or two commodities or any supplier services, I don't think find any because of the finance problem and all that, delaying payment and all that. Let's not go to that. Look at principally, once we take a registration, if I cross the threshold of 20 lakhs for most services, on the goods with this 40 lakhs. Okay, when I collect the taxes, pay the taxes monthly, file the 3D, file the GST 1, file 9 annually, and any corrections invoices I can do for 18 months. There is no revision of return as such. And more if you look at the 3B, earlier VAT under the surplus tax and excess tax complaint, 3B is very, very simple. Say first and 2 boxes, not much. It's all your own details. 7 is TDS and TDS, 6 is only payment of tax reconciliation. 3, 4, 5, 5 is a non-GST supply. 3 is outward supply and 4 is input tax restrictions. The 3 is more. No, sir, this is very good. I know why difficult it is. I don't want to say from your perspective, I know. Because the taxes, they won't be the details properly for complaints. That's the biggest challenge with that. How are you going to handle that? You handle. Okay. So, that is, those who don't know, it's a destined to repeat it. That's one always remember. Where, I'm always fascinated about say what all we did in the last 3 years. With this, we finally in 14 we did U-Pass. Today, 1/10/2020. That's what I was trying to Rajesh, Kumar and Shetty just a couple of hours back. Just we missed the bus during 2014. We could have done E-invoicing in 2014-15 itself. When you all uploaded your purchases and sales statement, forget about purchase, sales statements. I could have generated. See, you also upload at that time. Now also you are uploading the same data. Am I right or wrong? You are uploading now the same. At that time also you are uploading. Only thing that we never gave IRN and a QR code. That's it. What I'm trying to tell you, drive my point very clear. We were geared up in 14-15 itself. What is uploading a purchase and sales statement like GST 1, GST 2, what actually envisaged in GST implementation. So why I'm trying to tell you, finally the revenue authorities understood finally, because Pan India, the council and the finally said, okay, let us go with the 1/10/2020. That is the invoice journey from EU pass to E-invoice. That's what I am to place it on record. At that time, people are given so much of support. And this is what another that I wanted to say you. You can see this particular 10,07,877. See, I am very proud to say my website is a one-stop solution. One-stop OSS. You can ask anything. You can navigate from there to any website across India. And you have many details over that. I'm very proud it is updated as an yesterday. Anything to 2000. 10 lakh 7,000. It is only for a public domain, nothing more than that. No other activities. You can just see we are refreshing. We are coming out with a new version. I should place it written. I should thank you for all your support and you people are viewing this particular website day in and day out. 10 lakh people have visited. I see that. I request everybody to use this gst.audit. Let us make this to work more better for you people in days to come. And this is what always without celebration things will do. Even today we have a celebration for yesterday's this 10 lakhs because today is more than 10 lakhs and people have come. And this is what we celebrated the day one. When you all celebrating for something, we celebrate 3 years of label and 3 years of invoices. And one picture in E-invoice portal clearly shows what is the travel we have undertaken. It has every details of E-invoice and label. You just see E-invoice, they have reached 25 crores. As in this particular on the third, and you see 1/10/2020 is only mandatory for 100 crore, 5 crore above, whereas 1/10/11/2020 is mandatory for 100 crore above. And now actually already they have enabled on a sandbox. They are already enabled. Those that are turnover more than 50 crore, they can start testing and they can use it. Already they are enabled. It means to say whether it comes from April or not, we don't know. But they are enabled. At least you can understand how a IRM can be generated on the sandbox itself. You can go through that. And in this itself, what are the E-invoice? It's not full 100% transaction discovery. It's only B2B plus credit notes and debit notes and some exports. Other than that, it is not tracking. Even B2C, I wanted to clarify there also. The B2C transaction QR code is not there as of now. But there is a notification to say that from 1/4/2021, if you are not using QR code properly, some penalty and all that. I will not go to that. As of now, QR code is not there for B2C transaction. It's not enabled. And not from NIC, not from the GST, it is not enabled. That's what I want to place it. I want to make it clarity because many people they ask me and my WhatsApp my question, sir, B2C QR code avanga. It's only a notification is there. Please remember, as of now for B2C transaction, there is no QR code. Okay. And this was the status. I'll not go to that. Look at this yesterday night at 8:45. I should thank my NIC people with their login credentials, the database. I'm trying to give this particular look at it. The IRM generated from 2020 to 2021 yesterday. See, look at whole October 2020 is 5.69 lakhs IRM generated. E-invoices. Today in February, as in yesterday night for 8:45, 4.26 already generated. Then look at the cancellations, 1,40,000. That also cancellation within 24 hours of generation you can cancel it. If the e-waybill is generated, you can't cancel the IRM. That please remember, keep it in your mind. Once the e-waybill is generated, IRM cannot be generated once again. You have to go for cancelling the old transaction, and then you can go for new IRM and e-waybill generation. And look at the number of suppliers, 68,511. So across India, this is India, all India data. Around 68,000 taxpayers across India, they are generating IRM without any glitch. And look at the invoice recipients. In the January, you can see 33 lakhs. Even February, as in yesterday, 26 lakhs. Even if we take roughly 33 lakhs taxpayers across India, they have received e-invoices. You agree? They have received e-invoices. One fine means with 35 lakhs, it's nothing but 20% of the total taxpayer population. 1 crore 30 or 135 might be. It's around 25%, 20%. What I'm trying to drive the point very clear. So generation of e-invoice from the days to come, it should not be a problem at all. So when the supplier received e-invoices already, he knows only the next option the NIC has to give or the GST has to provide. Downloading the data. Once they download the data, it will become the purchases, isn't it? Only when they allow that and they can generate, so they can learn that also. So that is what I'm trying to drive this particular point. And look at through IRM port, IRP and e-waybill portal, through that, by generating e-invoices, IRM, you look at the e-waybill, as 1 crore 16 lakhs e-waybill service. It's not a small feat. As in 16 December 2020, still I can remember, especially in my memory, 100 crore invoices were generated across it. As in 16, now, if you look at it, it's more than 170 crores e-waybill service. You know another thing in that, even in 170 crores, my dear friends, you may wonder, those who are not mandatory to generate e-waybill, who are not mandatory, less than 50,000 rupees, isn't it? You know how many, what is the percentage of e-waybill generation by such? 32% of the taxpayers, the e-waybill generated were less than 50,000 rupees. What do you need to say? ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ Mr. ಜನಕ್ಕೆ e-waybill to e-invoice ಏನು ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಇದೆ? e-waybill ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು QR ಕೋಡ್ ಇದೆ, ಇದೇ ನನ್ನಪ್ಪ ಪ್ರಿಂಟಲ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ e-waybill ನಂಬರ್ ಇದೆ, ಅದು ಒಂದು ಪೋರ್ಟಲ್ ಅಪ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಜನರೇಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಸೇಮ್ ಇನ್ ದ e-invoice ಆಲ್ಸೋ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ e-waybill ನಂಬರ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು IRM ನಂಬರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. It's a 64 alphanumeric character. Nobody can remember or understand what it is. Okay, 64 alphanumeric character, which is a combination of GST the seller, invoice number, invoice date, and the which kind of invoice number, and which year and which type of a document. That's a algorithm they have written. It writes 64 character. Nobody can understand what is 64. One character also you can't generate print out another IR. That limitations are there. That's why NSC have devised one acknowledgement number. An Excel sheet on copy and paste on anytime. Top, which can be the QR app can be verified. We already enabled that particular officials also. What I'm trying to drive my point right? When 32% of the EV bills which are generated, you want 1 crore 16 like 32% 30% ಒಂದು 40 ಲಕ್ಷ EV bill ಏನು ಜನರೇಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ it is all by who are not required to generate EV bill. When they know how to generate EV bill, do you think they will not generate e-invoice tomorrow? Only thing that we have to give a web application. Andale, ಈಗ ಒಂದು API direct integration ಇದೆ, out of code ಇದೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ GST. There are the 3 options we have given, and that's why this is. If once it is made optional, e-invoice generation. But if a mandate, 50 ಕೋಟಿಗಿಂತ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ mandatory ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡ್ತೀವಿ, less than the option on it. I'm telling you, my dear friend, that 32% of renewable generation, then you can see them in the IR. It's an end of the day compliance. Okay, once I invoice generate ಮಾಡ್ರಿ, take it up. ಹೌದಲ್ಲ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟೇಷನ್ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಫಿಸಿಕಲ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಅಥವಾ ಕಾಪಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಇನ್ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಪ್ಲಸ್ ಇ-ವೇ ಬಿಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಆರ್ ಇ-ವೇ ಬಿಲ್ ಕಾಪಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಇದ್ರೆ ತಗೊಂಡೋಗಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ವಿ. ಟುಮಾರೋ ಇಟ್ ಮೇ ಕಮ್ ಏನು ಬೇಡ ಒಂದು ಐರನ್ ತೋರಿಸಿ ಸಾಕು. Show me in I can log in, I can check it out, I can say just movement. Understand if the deficiency of what consignments and what's value and all, that does not go to the next level of detention and verification. So what I'm trying to drive my point that days to come, if e-invoice becomes a thing for each and everybody across the country, then all these 3-way filing, 1 filing, I think they'll take a passage. When you require a 3-in-1 at that time, I feel 9 hours also not required. 9 is required. Although even financial statement with a compartment. I'm telling you, I have another next 3 years of my service. I will see this, I think. That's what my gut feeling is telling. I'll be there to see that happens. 3 will gone, 1 is gone, 2 is already gone. 2 is gone in 17-18 only. And finally, we say 9 is also gone. Only the invoice will generate one read for the payment of taxes. Monthly will generate model. You just, this is what I thought, let me share this information in addition to my talk. And otherwise, I don't get into any other features. All these people are aware of it. I'll just leave my slide here. And this is one tool I wanted to say. The NIC has released GST invoice preparing and printing tool. One of the beautiful tools, my dear friends. I'll not go to the details. People can access and you can see. It's just like a small cycle rather than a small scooter, like a Bajaj Chetak. Always I tell this is what I want for the taxpayer for compliance. Instead of audit, like ERP, SAP, audit. Now, at the end of the day, the vehicle is required to transit from point A to point B. So they have given a one small point A to be like a jet tool. Very simple Excel tool. Data entry made Excel, you can invite supplier information, recipient information. You just go through it. It is amazing features. It has different sheets, and you can upload the data, convert into JSON, convert data into the IRP portal. It throws your IRN and QR code, which you can print it on your invoice and you check it. Such a very simple tool. I think if the tax practitioners, particularly cost of whoever it is, the stakeholders start making this of it, I think we'll find a ERP, SAP, GST. They will say, "Sir, now not what sir." I hope the day will come because such a simple tool. If you give a better feedback and update it, I'll not go there. It's already the invoice portal. They'll give you all the details. I'm just popularizing how actually invoice can be made more simple for any tax practitioners to comply. And this is how it looks. This is what I said always. This is the ARN code. I think it can't be this is 64 the QR code in invoice. Otherwise, it's and this is what updation already I said. I'll not go to that. This one slide on please anybody want to keep it. It's more at glance. You will at glance. I think I'll not go in detail about all that. Anybody can pick it out.
People want this.
See, 8 hours, I can say, recent amendment, I'll not go which date and notification and all that. Usually, 8 hours means if the expiry of the we will still another 8 hours time is there, we should extend your interview. Always I'll tell my officers also. ಒಂದು ಅರ್ಧ ಗಂಟೆ 10 ನಿಮಿಷ 20 ನಿಮಿಷ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಷನ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ತುಂಬಾ ತೊಂದರೆ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಡ್ರಪ್ಪ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಲುಕ್ ಅಟ್ ದಿ ಜಿನೋನಿಟಿ just because half an hour, sir, half an hour expiry out. Say, I know I'm talking in a public podium, but still, this is what we are. But look into the transaction, what is happening, what kind of a commodity is that? 8 hours of time extension is there, particularly it's done for goods, wagon, and vehicles. I see there is an appellate authority. I say before this particular provision, I have only dismissed many cases where there's no provision at all for me. So 8 hours of extension, 24 hours, 8 hours of extension. Even though 24 hours is you can cancel within 24 hours, that's one. 72 hours is the word used for accept the rejected by the recipient. That's the 72 hours. And 15 days is part A. And the validity of the details what you enter into the system, only part A without part B. The 15 days validity. 16 days of Maya. So that is 15 days. Next 2 months, that's 2 months. I think anybody can say. Successively, if you are not filing the reinstatement for 2 months, even will get blocked. That's what I wanted to say for 2 months. And 20 kilometers and 20 kilometers. If you see, like this petroleum gas and that old dimensional vehicle, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ validity is 20 kilometers per day. That is what. Another 20 kilometers ಏನಿದೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ E-way bill ಬೇಡ ಅಂತ. ಅದು ಯಾಕೆ E-way bill ಬೇಡ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ particularly for the purpose of raiment and for that kind of activity they are going, there the E-way bill is not there. That is the 20 kilometers. And that 50 kilometers, once again from the taxpayer to the transporters, from the transport to the taxpayer, if it is within the 50 kilometers, once again there is no E-way bill is required. But other documents is required to carry. That's one thing. This 200 kilometers, 1/1/2021 has been mandated. So validity of the E-way bill every 200 kilometers. That's what I don't want to dwell more on that. That's the amendment from other it was 100 kilometers. Now from 1/1/2021, it is 200 kilometers. Next 50,000, you know that more than 50,000 of value, you need a E-way bill. That's the value. In irrespective of value, that's one drop I have given there. Means to say, for interstate movement of goods or for any job work, irrespective of the value, you need to have an E-way bill. That's what it says. In part A, part B, that's what is E-way bill. Without part B, only part A, it's not E-way bill at all. That one has to drive the particular. And as section 100 rupees, 10,000 are tax avoided, whichever is allowed. Okay, always there is one circular, I think people might have seen it or not. If any minor mistakes are there, okay, minor technical omissions are there, and the 97 pin code is 17 ಅಂತ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ತಾನೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಡೆಲಿವರಿ ಅಡ್ರೆಸ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ತಾನೆ, E-way bill ಡೆಲಿವರಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಬರ್ತಿರೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಎಲ್ಲ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಮಿಕ್ಕಿದಲ್ಲ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಡೇಟ್ ನ ಉಲ್ಟಾ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ತಾನೆ. ನಾನು ನೋಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಇವತ್ತು ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್ ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಜನ ನೋಡಿ ಟುಡೇ ಇಸ್ 22/20/21 ಬಂದು 25/20/21 ಬಂದೇ ಇರೋದಲ್ಲ ಮುಂದಿನ ತಿಂಗಳು ಸೊ ಬರ್ತಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಆಲ್ ಸಚ್ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಟೆಕ್ನಿಕಲ್ ಇಶ್ಯೂಸ್ then we have given a circular to say that's good. That is what section only do. And 120 to 120 are independent. I can appeal version of okay, that is not good. So 110 equal to tax and penalty value of goods. Next, as of now, because that's a proposed tax on a word taken will be 200% in the particular. This is what E-way bill at a glance. This one slide summarizes. That's what always I tell the practitioners, players, who serve it. If you want to ask me, sir, E-way bill ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳೋದೇನು E-way bill ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕಾ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಡ ಸರ್ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನೀವು ಪಾಲನೆ ಕೇಳಬೇಡಿ irrespective of value ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾರೆ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಡ ಹೆಂಗೆ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಬೆಲೆ ಪಾಠ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. I think I am driving point. Means to say, when I want to comply, when I want to generate E-way bill, why I should learn about it? Am I right or wrong? Why I should learn about nuances of that? I am telling my transporter, myself, and whoever the people, you please raise E-way bill, whatever the circumstances. Because 32% of the tax transactions are not mandated to raise E-way bill. I can recollect my memory when I was giving this kind of lectures in earlier my E-Sugam and U-Bar. They used to say, E-Sugam ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೇಲಿ ರಾತ್ರಿ ಎದ್ದೇಳೋದು ಗೊತ್ತು ಸರ್. ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಷ್ಟು ಸಲ ತಲೆನೋವು ಬರೋ ಚೆಕ್ ಪೋಸ್ಟ್ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಫೋನ್ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅದೊಂದು ತಪ್ಪು. ಈ U-Pass ಬಂದ್ಮೇಲೆ ಸರ್ ನನಗೆ ಜ್ಞಾಪಕ ಇದೆ, when U-Pass project was canvassing, when I was giving a lecture in Atria about it, the participant, one of the person, she's doing business over the phone. Means to say she's getting all alerts of what is going, what is coming, what is reconciliation, everything was coming over. So the compliance measures, what I am trying to tell you, technology is a boon as well as a thing. Remember that. I know the WhatsApp, more but stay. So my phone is 24 hours, it is not silent. Because I have to look at it. Once I go home, I want to look at it. But 2 to 3 hours, I'll be away. Till yesterday, my daughter was telling me when I'm going with her, walk with her, but can you give me a phone to make that? I don't know, you're going to look at that, you'll not concentrate over here. Okay, it's okay, but it doesn't matter. I'll give you the phone back. When it is taking space of your family, I know. See that it's very difficult to practice. See that it is only for your necessities. It is not difficult. Please, it's only for necessity. And no, if people wait for your compliance later. That's what I wanted to say. And this is what even at a glance I thought, let me explain. And this is challenges. I know the technological challenges with me, 100%. And the biggest challenge is, I'm telling you, changing the behavior of the taxpayers. The biggest challenge. Dabba hakodu, server hakodu, technology modu, software baribodu, ella baribodu. Unless until you change your behavior, how I can bring it up. And next is the last two, we fail, where the government fails at it. Outreach activities and reaching the stakeholders. Unless until we communicate, we talk to people, we hand over them, how you can expect to for a complaints? The same way, reaching the stakeholders, I feel, I'm proud to say, I am having an immense, very good relations who are the tax practitioners across the state or India. And phone call, they'll reply, I'll also reply, I'll reply. I think many of the tax practitioners are aware of it. I'll get back. Still one pending. When I pass for them, probably one pending. Still it is there in my memory. Yes, which I have attended. Means to say, unless until you reach out to them, they'll never reach out to us. Remember that one thing, I'm your official, that's what I always tell. If any person is calling you, texting you, means there is a necessity. If you can't answer at that time, at least answer at some time. At least before you go, when you are traveling back home, see the government has provided a vehicle, has provided a phone, what not, everything has been provided. Only thing that you have to be more proactive in the group. That's what I was trying to tell the Rajesh. Where I said I've been the Mangalore for a review of my officers, but I called the Mangalore chamber. I'm so and so, I'm coming because I know them. Why don't organize a meet? That's proactiveness. Instead of they calling, and they were so immensely happy, sir. The first meeting I have to Mangalore. They're very happy to host. Honestly, it's the first. No, why I can tell you, I know what I am. The same thing I tell everybody, you be like the way you want to be, you be what you are. But coming to the transformation of information, technology to the people, you handle them, talk to them. That's why in the QRF, if I come, I think you might have seen this on the web. There is a small failure in our part. We should not have made it more. See, it's an option. Why are you pushing me to become optional? Pushing to an option means by default you make me mandatory. But after 31st January, you say, I can go out. Let not go to the QRM testing. It will grow with the time. This is what I said. Always I remember. I think these are some of the important things. Another year I would like to mention one thing. In fact, I suggest a next trial version of E-invoicing and the actual original version of E-invoicing on the website is the same. So I have seen people who are doing mistakes and trial version and coming out from the problem says that it is a problem in the E-invoice portal. Actually, E-invoice portal there is no problem. Those were generated in an e-invoice-trial.ns.in. ಎರಡು ವೆಬ್ಸೈಟ್ ಒಂದೇ ತರ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ. ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ URL ನೋಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಲ್ಲ. I think there is no issues over that. And otherwise, all other and any small issues of e-invoice and email bill, people can flag to me because with them only we can address. If it is a sheer issue which can be for a pan-India issue, you can certainly try to do that. Link. This is what I want to say. So thank you for giving me an opportunity and to share my thoughts on recent proposed amendments and also overview what actually as in status of e-way bill and e-invoice. Thank you, Murali.
you very much, sir, for giving a very detailed presentation, and I know it is like just drinking a water for you, as you're always into it. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Members, let's take a short break for 15 minutes and assemble back. I request all of you to watch your members also to come back for the next session.
I think I did coaching you. Accident.
Welcome back, members, after this short break. Now we shall continue with the last session of today's program. We have CATR Rajesh Kumar with us to present on the topic proposed amendment in indirect taxes in Union Budget 2021. Over to you, sir.
The presentation. Presentation. ಕಳ್ಸ್ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ವಿ ಏನೇ ಮಾಡಿ ಇನ್ನೇನು ಮಾಡಿ
Good afternoon, everybody. I think for the first half of this particular program, we heard the concept, all these budget changes from the perspective of the revenue authorities. What exactly they are seeing with these amendments and how they are perceiving this these proposed amendments in this budget 2021. But as a as a professional, looking at from the perspective of our businesses, we are more focused onto the legal interpretation, the provision, the right of the businessman, the issues the businessman faces, and the reason behind these amendments, and what would be the impact of these amendments in the future days to come. I think when we see the proposed changes, especially in the context of the GST law, it appears that the direction seems to be clear, that whenever the judicial forums are coming out and rendering their decisions and trying to relax certain perspective which the revenue authorities do have, I think all are being viewed very seriously and tried to be looked back and to re-implement or reassert or re-establish the thought process or the view which the revenue authorities possess. In fact, with the proposed changes, if we see, the law, when it comes to our implementation, is going to be more rigorous in my view. In fact, from the perspective of a businessman, as far as the taxation is concerned, it would run towards the scaleism. In other words, most of the time when they are doing business, they should be afraid of the taxes when they will be doing a business, because of the fear of the impact which it would cause, even in cases where it was not a fault of his. 1. 2. Even if some unintended errors creeps in, he has to be afraid of it. Sometimes he might have not understood the way the nitty-gritties of the law functions, then also he has to face the music. So with all these scenarios in front of him, I only fear that it is going to create a fear in the mind of the businessman in these proposed changes. We heard the revenue authorities from their perspective. Yes, it was a necessity from their perspective as far as the tax administration is concerned. But at the same time, when you look at these changes, especially from the fact that whatever the promises which was given on introduction of a GST, the law going to be simple, it is going to be harassment free, it is going to be taxpayer friendly, it is going to be very simple with less of process and procedures. I think all appearing to be not that those objectives seems to be not being achieved is what we can see. I am not against all these changes, but at the same time, giving a complete powers to the revenue authorities without a proper guidelines and defining a certain aspects of it would create unnecessary practical issues or at the ground level when any things are being operated. So with this note, I will start one by one the changes. Though some of them were discussed in the earlier sessions, I am going to go and examine it from the perspective of a taxpayer, what it is, how it impacts all those aspects. The first and very spoken about amendment to the GST law is about the changes brought into the scope of supply in section 7.1. In fact, the clause which is proposed to be added in section 7.1 is clause A. You can see on the screen that it reads the activities or transaction. I have to repeat, it is not a supply of goods or services, it is activities or transaction by a person. Again, a person is very widely defined under the GST law. Other than an individual, a person or an individual, if you see, so this particular subclause or a clause is going to be applicable to all persons other than individual. Whether it is to what extent is applicable, we have to see when we get on to the practicality of it, of a transaction. Because majority of the cases it may not be relevant, but still here they have tried to define it that way. To its members, obviously individual will not have members, so there is no necessity of specifying it, but still they have specified it. Other than individual will not have the members. So its members or constituents or vice versa. Please note it is not only one side, it is both sides. Members and the association or association to the members. Either way, from both sides, any activities or transactions is what we are talking about. However, it is talking about for a cash, defer payment or other valuable consideration. I have to refer this in contrast with section 7.1a, where there is a requirement of any forms of supply like sale, barter, exchange, etc. for a consideration to be in the course of furtherance of business. Now, when we are interpreting this clause as an independent aspect than 7.1a, then here there is no mention about a separate consideration. Rather than that, it is specifically saying for cash, deferred payment, other valuable consideration. The similar words were there in the definition of a sale under the VAT laws, where it was considered the barter would not fit into these definitions. So here Unlike a 7(1)(a), the consideration can be any form, but here this clause is specifically talking about a cash, deferred payment, or other valuable considerations. Other valuable considerations to be read like in a cash and deferment decision which are rendered in the VAT laws may be relevant over here to adopt to analyze the phrase this cash, deferred payment, or other valuable consideration. Now here one next is business. There is no mention of a business over here. But since if you are to consider as independent, there is no requirement of a specific mention of a business over here. In fact, I have in the subsequent slides extracted some portion of a definition of business. How it reads there, vis-a-vis in contrast, if we read here, there is no mention of a business here, and the business definition over there does not cover wholly the entire gamut what it is covering in this particular clause AA. So this is something which we need to be aware of. If we interpret this clause AA is in continuation of clause A, then it gives a totally different outcome than the outcome which I am proposing to tell now, where if it's an independent, then it does not, we need not establish anything else. If it falls into this particular nitty-gritties, then it can be treated as supply. So, first of all, whether clause A or a clause B or a clause C is a supplemental to the main clause A, if that is our interpretation, then entire things when we read is going to change. So, still this is still a proposed amendment. We have to see how it is going to be finally drafted, because a lot of representation is already going on the way it is drafted, because I can give an explanation when I read, there are some anomalies contained over there. So in that context, if you see this particular phrases, if it remains so, it all depends upon again going before the courts and testing whether it has to be read independent of 7(1)(a) or dependent on 7(1)(a). Now, if I read this explanation, for the purpose of this clause is hereby clarified, notwithstanding anything can be held up with the timing in court or any judgment, decree, or order of any court running authority. Okay. The person and its members, here they have used the word person. In the above portion, they use the word person as an individual, whereas in the explanation they are not using so. They are simply use the general entire the term person. Okay, person and its members or constituents shall be deemed to be two separate persons. So in this explanation, there are two parts which is coming in. One, if this explanation is treating them as a two separate persons, and the supply of activities or transaction. This is where the problem comes in. Till now in the GST Act, when we are reading, we have heard the word supply of goods or services or both. That is what always comes over. When we say supply, automatically supply of goods or services or both. But here, suddenly we are reading supply of activities or transaction. I couldn't understand how can there be a supply of activities or transactions. The activity or transaction can be in the nature of supply of goods or services. There cannot be a supply of activity or a supply of transaction. I think there seems to be a clear-cut drafting error in this, which maybe they were, whereas in clause A, they are talking about merely activity or transaction. Supply includes activity or transaction, whereas in explanation is talking about a supply of activity or transaction. I think there is a little of a conflict between the same. Intersection should be deemed to take place from one such person to another. So between them, they are deeming certain activity. In fact, this is proposed to be given a retrospective effect from 1st July 2017. I should have started told that all the changes in the GST law, unless specifically mentioned, will be coming into force from the date to be notified after enactment of this particular bill into an act. Please note, GST is no more only the sender. Otherwise, they would have said that from the date of enactment. Since all the state legislatures are also required to enact a similar provision. They have to come into on the board. Then after that, they are going to notify a date from which the changes will come into force. Though the date they are going to notify, but as far as the effect of this particular amendment will go back from 1st July 2017. It's a retrospective amendment which has been made. Basically, if you see the background for these changes, in fact, there is also enumeration of the same in the 39th meeting of the GST Council. If you see the agenda item and the proposal over there and the minutes where they agree to pass on that particular proposal, they do say there was an apprehension that whether the decision of Honorable Supreme Court, larger of Honorable Supreme Court in case of Calcutta Club, where they upheld the mutuality principle even for the service tax as well. And even though when there was a provision in the taxable services specifically saying that it will be a taxable service, the Supreme Court made an observation saying that if they are not treated as a separate distinct persons, though the definition of a taxable service saying that is a taxable service would not help. So unless the law make them as a two separate independent person, they cannot be a tax on the same. In fact, here the main clause is not addressing that. This explanation is addressing that, treating them as an independent person. In fact, one of the states did mention already there is a definition of a business that would suffice to take care of the observation made in the Supreme Court, but it was not agreed by other people, and they said no, there should be an amendment, and the amendment should be retrospective.
The example for services, previous slide.
In fact, the proposal which was placed before the council and approved in the council, the wordings of the proposal was different than the final wordings which has come out in the finance bill. There, it talked about only an association, the incorporated, unincorporated to its members and the person. Whereas here, it is coming out to be like person other than individual to its members and constituents. So, are they trying to expand the scope which was hitherto not there in the law, or it was only a curative and clarificatory in nature? Since they have given effect to from retrospective effect, looking from the background and the minutes of the meeting, it can be said that this is only intended to address the situation of a club and association or similar such association, AOPs, UOI, etc. But whereas the wording summary, if they go strictly, it can have a very wide ramification, including joint ventures, arrangements of the consortium partners bidding for a work where consortium partner, lead partner does every activity in his name, whereas all the partners will share the revenue and expenses and the work. What is the impact of that still to be assessed in the light of these changes? These services, say the example of a consortium partner, one lead partner will be there and all the bills, invoices, documents, everything will be raised in that person's name, whereas other partners execute, they share the revenue coming to the common account, they'll be doing the work. So whether if that consortium is treated as an AOP, then if that case, then individually there will be double taxation, especially the project is that of a exempt supply. Then as an exempt supply is only between a person to a government, and there is no back-to-back exemption available for a person who is providing to that person. So the subcontract will not enjoy the benefit of that exemption. So the members of the consortium or the AOP or a joint venture may not be treated as eligible to that exemption, will have an issue in this context if it is so examined, so interpreted. I think this requires attention of a government to look at it and clarify and make a required changes when it goes for a actual, enactment. So I think furthermore clarity is required. The proposal was something, but the bill wordings are somewhat something different. So I think it is best addressed in my view. So consequently, there is also omission of paragraph 7 in schedule 2. Actually, the paragraph 7 of schedule 2 was not at all relevant in the context of the supply, because after the insertion of section 7(1)(a), the schedule 2 is merely for the purpose of classification. It was not to determine the supply. So that entry was whether to treat as supply of goods or supply of services. First of all, the test of it being supply or not should be fulfilled in terms of section 7(1). Then only we go to 7(1)(a) to determine the classification. As the levy itself was failing, this was anyhow not relevant, but they have consequent to this, they have omitted that again retrospectively from 1st July 2017. And again, it's only a connected amendment. Nothing much to look at from that perspective. In fact, with these changes, the people are, especially our chartered accountants community, most of them who practices at official places, they're asking one primary question: sir, what happens to the partners and the partnership firm? Because other than individual, partnership firm is also a person other than individual. Whether the partners and the partnership firm, whether the remuneration is liable for tax, can it be taken as a salary and exclusion? So like this, similarly, what happens to HUF and the members of a HUF? Similarly, various other types of person, cooperative societies, members of the cooperative societies who are independent. So many questions are being asked. As I said, the intention, in my understanding, is clear only to address association, body of individual, AOP, clubs, and not to address tax the transaction between a partnership firm and the partners. 1. 2. If they had intended, so they would have used the word partners or a co-partners. So the wordings are talking about a constituents. Constituents are generally used for the term with unincorporated. There they use joint venture, concession fund. There they use the constituents. So it is intended only for that, not to cover partnership firm or HUF is what my reading of this law. So may and also I understand that anything which is paid by the firm to the partner, irrespective of it being called as a remuneration, still it is nothing but a share of profit, which should be considered. So going by that, also there cannot be a tax on that activity because partner and the partnership firm are the same. So they are acting for and on behalf of, not on, basically jointly and severally. Partners are working jointly for the partnership firm. That is how we look at it. So I think with that, I see no apprehension. It is better that the before the bill is passed, these aspects are clarified so that there is no confusion. The next changes is input tax credit. Section 16(2), conditions for availing input tax credit. First of all, there is a basic doubt whether the conditions set out in section 16(2) is a precondition or a condition even can be fulfilled duly. Why am I saying this? One of the conditions there is that the supplier should have paid tax to government. There may be scenarios where he has uploaded GSTR1 but not paid tax. It was reflected in your whatever the 2A, the credit would have been taken. If it is interpreted as a precondition, if subsequently, if it is found that he had not paid tax on that day, but he had paid tax on any future day, can they come to the recipient and deny the credit? If it is to be read as a precondition. If answer to that is yes, they can do it, then this amendment also can be read to be a precondition. Though they, in all the cases where they are saying it appears that they intend this provision to be a precondition for availing a credit. Before you take you avail an input tax, take a credit into your returns, 3B returns, which effectively goes into electronic trade ledger. You should satisfy this condition if that's what it appears from the way it is drafted, even the memorandum of the changes which have been given along with the finance bill also indicates so. But I'm just giving a thought process that if there's a possibility to say in a comparative reading that it can be a condition which can be fulfilled even otherwise in the subsequent date, but if you fulfill the condition to avail a input tax, if you read so, then again there will be a question, then can I take a credit without receipt of a good which I think I'm going to receive a good subsequently or a services subsequently. So there is a divide on this opinion as to whether precondition or not. Now, presently for the purpose of this discussion, we go that this condition is a precondition for availing a input tax credit. So that being the case, as already been told that why the amendment they were trying to introduce this because they found GSTR1, the number of returns filed as far as GSTR1 compared to 3B, there was a substantial difference, and the turnover was there, which was here. People have uploaded GSTR1 but not 3B. Obviously, wherever they do not have a sufficient resources to make a payment, they would have deferred or delayed the filing of 3B. In addition to cases where there are really tax evaders who have merely filed GSTR1 but not filed GSTR3B and ran away or absconding or not available and defrauding only they have done that. Except leaving that part, denying assessees for various reasons they have not filed 3B may be the reason. But they have thought in order to curb the cases where enabling a fraudulent credits, they have now imposed this condition to all the assessees, irrespective of whether they are genuine or not genuine. I think we are going back to the earlier days where we were seen as all the assessors were seen as tax evaders and try to curtail. Let's forget about what the intention thing, but practically the difficulties are enormous for a genuine assessees. For whatever reason, the supplier has not uploaded the credit. It may be he would have uploaded wrongly to B2C or instead of B2B, or that they are uploaded but not filed the return, or there is actually they have gone to a wrong registration number. So, or the person does not have money, so he has not uploaded. Now that they are going to block GSTR1 also, they don't file the returns. So it is going to essentially kill the businesses in one way, whereby yes, there was an undue advantage taken some of the persons, but doesn't mean that should hamper the business of the economy. Now, the purpose of the GST was to enable the free flow of credit. The constitutional mandate was very, very clear that we will give you a free flow of credit. That was, and with that promise, I repeat, with that promise, the output tax rates were increased, saying that wherever I was paying 12.5% 5% of excise duty or 14.5%. They said, okay, you would have paid so much, now you are restricted 18% the credit, so ultimately. Now, if you are not getting a credit, but you are asked to pay 18%, it is 18% plus 18%. Effectively, it is 35%. It depends on the margin. It may be 30 to 36% somewhere, anywhere. So, in such a scenario, that burden of that impact would be going on to the customers, on to the business. The survival of business will become a question. And with all these measures, the small and medium businesses who are essentially facing the cash crisis as it is are going to face a problem. This is from a business perspective. Technically speaking, now whenever I have spoken about this particular provision, the first question which is coming in is, sir, what happens to this rule 36(4), which gives us now at least 105% of the credits uploaded or appearing. If we are treating this as a precondition for availing ITC, that rule will be omitted as soon as this particular proposed provision gets into the statute. They cannot coexist together because Act is saying that you can take a ITC only if they upload. If they don't upload, you cannot take credit. So that being the case, if they to the extent of the 5% they are not uploaded, so then you are not at all entitled to take credit up even that 5%. The trend is also clear for you all: 20%, 10%, 5%, and it will be 0%. So essentially, you will take a credit only it's being uploaded. Having said this, now coming into the legal side of it, whether these type of amendments putting a responsibility onto the recipient where he cannot ensure that the other person can go ahead and pay that, or he cannot influence upon the other person's acts, can he be asked to pay for the default of somebody else? Especially with one of the amendments which is brought out, not that comes later, but where the revenue has all the authority and measures, in fact, which is given by virtue of a blocking of credit, enabling recovery, all those provisions being given. If somebody is defaulting, the machinery is given to the government to go and catch hold and recover that person and collect that amount along with interest and penalties from those persons. But at the same time, having collected interest from the day when he has raised an invoice, the corresponding credit will not be given to me until unless it is uploaded. So the intermittent period, the government is unjustly enriched. Say a person who has issued an invoice, say in the month of August 21, but he did not upload until say December. From August to December, department would anyhow collect a interest for that delayed payment of tax through cash. Whereas the assessee or the recipient side is not given a credit for that 3 months, because thereby the government is unjustly enriched with the interest for that whatever period from August to December, where on the one hand they did not give a benefit to the other person, at the same time they want this revenue to be kept for themselves. So I think there is a something which is not going in accordance with the logic and the business requirement. So I think one of these can be a basis to say this amendment requires reconsideration. And at the same time, there is a decision on the VAT law, excise law, where they have said you cannot deny the credit to the recipient for the default of the supplier. So whether this challenge to this provision before the court of law would be sustained or will it pass through the test before the Supreme Court, we have to wait and see. But till then, wherever the assessees are able to withstand this financial stress and still do a business can survive. Otherwise, they will have to undergo a lot of litigation. I think one of the favorite amendment, which is as per the department, no, as far as the department claimed that this is a welcome amendment as far as the trade is concerned. I really do not know. Also being stated at multiple forums that it is being objected too much by the chartered accountants. I really did not got that feedback whenever I met many chartered accountants at different places, especially office places. They were in fact said that this is a good move. The reason being, okay, audit, whether this section existed or not existed, when any audit, financial audit, they are also supposed to check the aspect of a compliance of the GST law as it would impact the financial positions status of any entity. So this was not something which was additional. Additional work which was supposed to have been done was essentially that of a reconciliation statement and a reporting. That anyhow is bound to be there, but only thing the signature part, instead of a chartered accountant certifying, it will be certified by the respective assessee. In fact, the trade, as my understanding and my version of the trade was that many a times when the assessee wanted to file the GSTR 9, the auditor was not allowing them to file that 9C, 9 and 9C, because there were discrepancies. They wanted the discrepancies to be corrected, tax to be paid, without which they will not sign 9C before filing. So that was a more apprehension for the businessman. Two, many of the chartered accountants put their foot down to say, unless I report this point, I cannot sign this 9C. Where many companies were clear that they wanted a clean report. So there were all varieties, but it cannot be said that it is where the trade insisted because they were facing a problem with so many reasons. So different people may have different versions. Let it be as it may be. But the point is, now with these changes, there is no specific mention of an audit by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant. Nevertheless, there is a requirement of filing a reconciliation statement between the financial statements and the GST returns. That would be supposed to be prepared by the assessors themselves and they are certified. But obviously, especially the number of, volume is concerned, where they have in-house people to comply and prepare GST 9C, number wise may be less, but whereas the volume, the numbers, as far as the cases where they need an assistance from a professionals would be more, because they may not be able to prepare themselves. Even in cases where they prepare, there is a very good chance that they may go wrong, which may lead to a subsequent demands, subsequent audits, subsequent interest, subsequent penalties. So, in the interest of a business, the respective business people may have to take a call whether they have to be precautionary or will see when it comes and pay with the whatever the fee, tax, interest, and penalty for the detention. It is a call, but nevertheless, in my understanding, this is not going to change the position in majority of the numbers, though it may impact the bigger companies where they have their internal resources to do this. This was quoted by many people as a reason for removing the audit, but I am purely in disagreement with whatever stated here. The reality is that there were difficulties both the portal, the format, the lack of clarity in what is to be filled, the lack of scope of the provisions itself. So that cannot be blamed otherwise. I think this is a consequential amendment to 44 where the reconciliation statement is asked to be prepared by the assessors themselves and self-certified and filed. So to see the format, what it will be then, how easy and how simple it would be. In fact, the original format of reconciliation, when it had draft, had seen somewhere before the GST law, at the time when GST was proposed to be introduced, the format was very simple. It simply had given a columns as to the turnover in the financial, the difference, reason for the difference. Not getting into all these details. So it was very simple that any person should be able to easily do it. But the way presently it is, with lot of notes attached to it, disclosure, what to disclose, what not to disclose, going out a report from different tables is what is creating a problem. It is not the what the audit or so-called audit will. In fact, there was a lot of debate when the GST audit was introduced, whether the definition of audit, scope of a CA or a ICW is to merely do a reconciliation and also to carry out a verification of a correctness of a GST compliance. So divergent views with all, I think these amendments is going to put to rest all those debates. Now the definition of audit, the 270, whatever it is confined only for the purpose of departmental audits. And this departmental audits is going to gain much more power, much more impact on the businesses. We are moving back to the original traditional practices which used to be there before introduction of a GST. When they come for an audit, the demands is going to be huge based on even minor technical issues. In fact, wherever there is an audit which has started, we are seeing as simple points as the 2A of a particular month reflected this much, but the invoice is uploaded by the supplier on the subsequent months, so you are liable to pay interest for the 2 months. So nothing but the 16A amendment, the 62A amendment is going to be the similar, actually giving the power to make such type of demands. So it is going to be very, very minute. So the impact of these changes are going to give elaborate powers, authority for the officers to demand taxes, and it is going to lead, very importantly, uncertainty as to the liability in businesses. I repeat, these type of changes and powers are going to create, unexpected, unascertainable demand in any business where it can fall onto the business and can wipe off the entire business network itself. So they have to be very, very cautious, especially because if the credit is held to be ineligible and for technical reason you cannot reavail it, there's going to be a lot of issues because the time limit for avail did not avail within that October, but he uploaded later, he filed late. As it is already, we are receiving a notices where returns of a March 19 filed after October 19, they are saying that you are not eligible for the entire credit. So, in fact, in one case, on 21st they wanted to file, their portal was not working. 20th was holiday. 20th October, 19 was a holiday. 21st they couldn't file. They filed on 22nd. So there is already a proposal to deny the credit, almost equal to what is a medium SC of 7.5 lakh rupees. So I think these type of minor issues impacting our businesses would be very, very serious concern, especially the way the present situation of business where they're trying to come out of all this present situation. In fact, from the very beginning, I was mentioning that make this interest when it comes to section 50 also make a return filing independent of the payment. Once a return filing happens, in fact, section 7512 gives that power. In fact, it talks about it, where it says you self-assess your tax but do not pay and you file a return, the recovery provisions will be invoked. Which means that you can go ahead and file the return. Your filing of a return is independent of you making a payment of tax. Or alternatively, at least, even if you do not want to enable, make the tax payment aspect utilizing the credit independent of filing return. At least that would say that the interest part of it, that whatever the issues which we are facing presently would have been avoided.
It is like, I think, supplies declared should be inbound, outbound both.
Sorry?
If you say supplies declared, you can say the value of supplies declared would mean inbound, outbound both.
No, it is from which you are talking about section.
This is like,
Section 44 is made a reconciliation statement of Inaugural. The reconciliation between both.
the books of account could be in days. Then how do they reconcile? Then they again.
Okay, I think the question here for the benefit of the online audience, they might have not heard it. So, what if there is an issue in preparing a reconciliation between the financial statements vis-a-vis the actual GST returns? In fact, I think some 20 days back, I got a call from some chartered accountant saying that, sir, the assessor has not maintained books of accounts. He has not prepared a financial statements, though he is liable to be audited under the GST law. Now, there is no requirement under the whatever the notional based income taxation. So there, the fact that there is no financial statement, what you are going to reconcile, there cannot be any reconciliation. And obviously, wherever there is an impossibility of a reconciliation, or the figures do not give you the way of reconciliation, because your accounting is based on some notional thing. Essentially, in case of a construction contract and all, percentage completion, where it is not actually linked to the billing or the thing. So that is where the adjustment columns are given out there. You have to report over there any other thing and put it. And in fact, specifically in the report portion, you can mention this aspect, why it cannot be reconciled, or that you are following the emails, whatever the due to which this reconciliation of inward doesn't happen, whatever it is, the format which is there. This is what I told. The format which is there presently there as a reconciliation statement 9C itself is so complicated, and we deliberate upon so much. We have to conduct so many seminars, etc. It is not a matter of a problem with the audit. It was the format which is prescribed is a complexity. Okay. Yeah. I think next comment is about section 50, subsection 1. The changes is an interest. Here they have addressed one of the concerns related to interest. Why I am saying that one of the concerns? Because I'll take an example. There is a 10 lakh liability for a particular month. Out of 10 lakh, you have 8 lakh of ITC for that month, but you do not have money to pay that 2 lakh. So you are deferring the filing of return for the subsequent periods. So you are delayed for 6 months. Now the question was whether you are liable to pay interest on either 10 lakh or 2 lakh. The interpretation which was placed by the revenue officers and recovery was initiated, all those things happened on the interpretation that it should be paid on 10 lakh, because unless you file a return, the payment doesn't happen. That is what is a presumption or an understanding which was there. So in order to actually, if you see carefully, see section 50, it is talking about payment to government. It is not talking about payment as per the provisions of the GST Act. Furthermore, section 50 subsection 2 do not come out with a methodology of working out the interest. Already the petition is before Karnataka High Court on that. Now, here, when there was no issue at all, we are addressing a non-issue and trying to say that no interest should be on a net, not on gross. So the amendment came, they gave effect to, again that was not addressed fully. So they have now made a new proposal to replace the thing and giving effect to retrospectively. Now here, if you see, it is covering only a situation where returns have been filed belatedly. Now, even returns filed belatedly may have one more issue. In the example which I said, out of 10 lakh, 8 lakh was a credit, no problem. 2 lakh I was supposed to pay. I filed return after 6 months, no doubt, but I paid a tax after 3 months. I paid the tax to government exchequer and it was lying in my credit ledger. When you are accepting a credit ledger balance is sufficient and not to be considered for the purpose of interest, why not a balance in a cash ledger with a balance available? Similarly, a person who is having a balance in cash ledger and credit ledger, but he filed a return belatedly. Even by virtue of this amendment, still there may be interest for the period of the delay to the extent of the debit made through a cash ledger. So, in my understanding, this is not addressing fully. Now, one more aspect. This particular amendment is covering a situation where you have declared the liability in the same month, but could not file a return, but file. What happens? You have a sufficient credits all along. You are not paying anything in cash. But whereas one of the invoices, while reporting in 3B, you missed out. You reported that invoice in after 3 months. Now the question is, am I liable to pay interest on that invoices which is reported after 3 months? Whether since I was having a sufficient credit, would that be treated as a sufficient means to say that I did not have to pay interest on that? Or if partially by credit, partially by interest, can I take a similar view that though I reported, so interest should be on this? These aspects would surely go before the courts and would get decided in due course based on the interpretation which the judicial forums are going to take. This amendment to section 74, here in this section 74, there was an explanation which was there for the co-notices. When there is a demand of tax and consequently there are other proceedings against the people who are associated with that particular transaction, who are called as co-notices. The co-notices could have violated or the penal provision other proceedings could have been under section 120, there is a penalty, 125 there is a penalty, 129 there is a goods while moving in transit, 130 confiscation. Now they have realized that when many people took this argument before the authorities, especially in all those fraudulent invoices case, when the main person has paid the duty, all the consequent people who are there in the loop should be discharged by virtue of this particular explanation. So they have realized that, especially 129, 130, contribution, etc. Probably they have concluded that 122 and 125 they have left and removed 129 on that. That is one reason. Second, they have made section 129, as Murali Krishna was mentioning, as independent code in itself. They are not linking that to any other provisions, because there were a lot of questions which were raised as to operationalization of that particular provision the way it was, and it is presently. Because, for example, a goods moving from, say, Maharashtra and going to Tamil Nadu, the goods are intercepted in Karnataka. It's an interstate supply where the origin is in Maharashtra, destination is in Tamil Nadu. Karnataka do not have anything to play as to the taxes on that. So, how the taxes would have been collected, in what nature they would have collected. So there were a lot of questions, and again, as was being mentioned, now if somebody pays the tax and penalty on detention of the goods to get the goods released, already an invoice was there where the tax was already assessed or assessable, already declared or to be declared, which would have gone in the normal course of their returns. Again, payment of this amount as tax, what characters it takes, whether it is adjustable against that original tax already paid, or can I go back and claim a refund? This is another issue. Third scenario where the goods were sold on ex-factory basis, the buyer is bringing the goods, and there is some mistakes on the e-way bill. Tax is already paid, there is no dispute on that. Now, when the owner comes forward, they have to pay tax again to release the goods. So they will pay the tax and will come in. What is the nature of the tax? As a recipient, I am liable to pay tax. It is nothing. I mean, there is no requirement that recipient has to pay tax in this scenario, but it is collected from him. What he should do? How he is going to adjust that tax paid? So these were all the confusion which was there. So in order to solve the problem, they said, okay, you have a problem, no problem, we'll solve your problem, but not the concern. So they have said, we will remove the word tax, we will make it as a penalty. So whatever you are paying, the 2 times of the tax, they made as a penalty. So I think once they are making there as a penalty, this particular provisions connected to tax, etc., is being removed, because that is made only as a penalty provision in section 129. This explanation is added in section 75, that is self-assessed tax. The term self-assessed tax includes whatever the tax payable declared in GSTR 1, though not declared in GSTR 3, because GSTR 1 is merely a statement of outward supply. It is not a self-assessed tax in the returns. So that was a technical ground which was being taken. Now they have said, once you have declared something as your tax payable in terms of GSTR 1, then you cannot go back and defer the payment. We can come and initiate all the recovery proceedings. You can audit come and do. Now there will be a question where they need not issue notice. They can go straight away and initiate a recovery proceedings. If something is done mistakenly uploaded, what happens? In fact, this section 17 and 75:12 itself was a matter which went before the Kannada High Court in the context of interest, where the department took a thing that whatever the interest payable on the tax is already self-assessed. So therefore, I can go ahead and initiate a recovery procedure. So then the High Court said, when they are disputing that amount, you are required to issue a show cause notice. If they were not disputing the amount payable, then no issue can go ahead. So similarly, if there is any mistake on that part, you can always write a letter to correct that mistake and say that it is a mistake and give evidence to that effect. So if they want to proceed, they are supposed to give an opportunity of hearing before proceeding with the recovery process. They cannot straight away initiate the recovery process. This is what we can note down on this. Section 83 is concerned provisional attachment. only limited extent of some provision. Courts came heavily on various authorities, including Gujarat High Court. Wherever they are attached provisionally, they said you are hampering the business. So in order to, what I can say, overrule the decision or effectively overcome the findings of that decision, they have proposed to make a provision for provision attachment when any of the proceedings in these provisions initiated itself. So they need not be ongoing, because it was saying that during the pendency. So the question was, once certain things happen, the proceedings is no more pending. So they said once it's initiated, anytime after initiation you can, irrespective of whether it's concluded, not concluded. So they have taken a wide powers under this, covering almost all the provisions through which they can knock the door of the taxpayers. Before going to this 107, I will try to cover section 129 first and then come back to 129. In fact, was actually, we wanted this Murali Krishna to deal with it very detailed. That is what was the agenda, we thought. But nevertheless, section 129 is a provision which deals with when the goods are being, are in movement or being stored as a part of a transit. Then any of the violation of the act or the rules made there, then they get a power to invoke section 129, whereby, very important to note, the power is only to detain or seize the goods. It is not confiscate, detention or seizure. In my understanding, there should be an assessment under section 64 to that effect. If now there should be a proper guidelines issued by the government in terms of section 129, which are all the scenarios section 129 should be invoked. The reason because the purpose and the intention, we may have to take it out from the way it was designed. It was merely wherever somebody is transporting the goods or storing the goods with an intention to evade payment of tax, this provision was put into statute. Somebody is trying to move a goods or take out the goods, store the goods for the purpose of evading the taxes, and e-way bill was there which stops any such type of evasion activities, to check that thing. But the intention seems to have been given go by. Even for a minor errors, the tax invoice is there, tax payment is there, everything is there. The e-way bill due date, the time expires. Yes, strict interpretation of rule is fine, but is it going to serve the purpose for which it was designed? In fact, there are cases where, one of the cases which recently I was handling, night 12 o'clock, the e-way bill got expired. That was supposed to have reached there because of a trust breakdown. There was a delay. In the night, he couldn't have communicated nor generated. The 8 hours time was lapsing at 8 o'clock morning. Office opens at 9 o'clock. The vehicle had come on the same road. He is not able to identify the shop, but it's on the same road, in the beginning of the road. 8:25, the officer intercepts the goods and says, e-way bill has expired. What? No other, the shop can be seen from 100 meters from the place where it is intercepted. The address is there, but still they confiscated and they said unless the tax is paid, the penalty equal to tax is paid, we are not going to release the goods. Now, yes, we can see that there may be a genuine cases where there is no intention, but still these things happen. When the tax payment is there is no intention, merely for a procedural violation, can the penalty be to such an extent of twice the tax amount, or in case where somebody doesn't come, we can agree. The clause B is fine. Clause B is talking about a situation where the owner does not comes forward. Then it is fine. But in a situation where the owner comes forward and is able to explain the reason for it, and there is a power there to give a notice and to adjudicate it. The adjudicating powers is not merely a formality, it is with the discretion inbuilt to the officer to consider the situation. Whether, so can it be said that any type of violations under the Act and rules would invite section 129? My doubt is no. It has to be seen purposively, and only in cases where the taxes were not paid, but the goods were being moved. That was when the present section 129 is applicable by reading it in totality. Whether taxes is reflected, taxes is paid, there could not have been a payment of 129 at all. So I think that was ignored and being read. And if you see that, put a number of cases in the high courts reported where the final decisions have been ruled, the number of cases on e-way bills are much more, or at least matching to other all cases, type of cases put together. So I think this e-way bill is causing a lot of problem. In other words, by the proposed amendment, the provisions similar to earlier check post provisions are reintroduced. I am not seeing any different. In fact, this is much more rigorous seems to be than the earlier check post related provision in the different state. This is my personal opinion. And furthermore, they have removed the confiscation proceedings from the 129 and made it independent. As far as 129 is concerned, they have given powers for them to issue a notice, then either release the goods on being paid. If it is not released, then in such a scenario, they can, within 15 days, they do not come forward after the order. They are given a powers to make a dispose of the goods, realize the money, adjust towards the penalty payable. Now, take a situation, if some goods are intercepted, you want the goods, then you will pay the amount equal to 200% of the tax. Get the goods released. Now you want to file an appeal. Where is the question of pre-deposit? You already deposited the full penalty. Now I go back to the previous slide. Here is a provision appeals which says if you want to file an appeal against a e-way bill related violation or whatever it is, then you are required to deposit how much? 25% of the penalty. 25% of the 200%, nothing but 50% of the tax. Then only you can. I am not able to understand when I am already to release the goods, I have to pay 200% of the penalty. Once I have paid, there is a question of this provision coming in. I can read it other way, where I say, no, I did not release, so order is passed, so I want to go on appeal, then I will deposit 50% of the tax, not 25%. Then what happens? Here there is no deterrence for the officer after having completed 15 days to dispose of the goods and adjust for that 200%. It does not debar from him from doing it. There is a time limit for appeal. What it stands for is a question. Now there is only one positive which I am seeing is section 129(1)(c), where it talks about either you can pay or you execute a bond and release a goods, security, bond security, and in such a scenario, only this appeal with this 25% penalty may come into picture. So if we read it together, either detention, then you execute a bond, then you file an appeal, then this 25% applies. Otherwise, in the case where you are already asked to pay 200% and release the goods, I don't see this appeal provision to be applicable. Practically, many of our friends are aware that the procedure of accepting a bond with the surety or security is not being accepted or entertained by many of the officers, and also the process and procedure involved is too complicated. They should go to bank again. They should make a deposit of that amount and take the bank guarantee. So that actually the provision in effect has become redundant. So effectively, this appeal provision also will in effect be redundant. In my humble submission, that this 129 amendments should come up with much more clarity as to the nature of violations in the Act and rules, rather than for all violations in the Act and rules. And there is one omission of reference section 67(6). It doesn't impact, in my understanding, because already 129(1)(c) exists. Why they have to remove that? Because the tax aspect of it is already omitted, therefore there is no requirement. 130, there is consequential changes by delinking 129 to 130 and make it much more specific for the confiscation proceedings. They have made one modified or edited to make it much more meaningful under section 130. Section 151 was earlier only confined to statistical purposes data collection. Now it has been made for any purposes. So the commissioner is empowered to collect information. It may be through various associations, various bodies, or various authorities. They can collect the information and they can use against that information against an assessee, but only conditions they now put is before using that against an assessee, taxpayer, they are supposed to give an opportunity of hearing to them that why they should not use that against them. I think these were the CGST changes. I now move on to IGST changes. In fact, in the earlier session, there was a mention that there is nothing new. Already rule was stating for supply to SEZ, the zero-rated supply definition do not put any condition of authorized operations. Whereas rules were saying that goods supplied for authorized operation is only available for refund. So now many objections were raised everywhere, saying that Act is not imposing such condition. Why in the rules? So they are proposing to amend the Act to bring in line the rules. These other usually you say to come first then rule. Now rules are coming first and then consequently Act. Fortunately, it is not being made retrospective amendment. It is only another prospective amendment. One more thing, as far as the export of services, the definition of export of services itself was having a condition of realization export in foreign currency, whereas goods is only going out of India. That was a condition. They wanted to put the condition that even for export of goods, somebody who wants to claim a refund. I repeat, only for claiming refund. If you are not claiming refund, you are domestically utilizing the credits for other clearances, then this is not a condition at all. You can still need not realize for the goods, but fulfill the export condition and avail the benefit. But once you want to claim a refund, relation of export, export proceeds is a must. In fact, this was brought in rule. They are now again making the enabling clause in the Act. Now, one more option for the refund, which was easy for an exporter of goods, was a services also for that matter. Instead of going for a unutilized ITC, they could have gone for a payment of IGST on the exports and claim a refund. That was simpler method, and also there was no requirement of establishing only imports or input services or capital goods. They could have utilized all the available ITC. Now they are coming out by saying you do not have a freedom to do in all the cases. The government is going to notify which type of goods and services you are going to claim this, and for which type of exporters will be entitled for this. So one class of goods or services, another class of export of goods or services will be notified. Only those will be entitled to go for this methodology of IGST. So I think this is, I don't know why they did. It all depends what type of category they are notified here. If they are going to confine here, then I think it is not a well information. If they are only going to say, put it merely for the purpose of evading the, undue benefits being availed from few of the exporters, then fine. Otherwise, it is not a, I think the time allotted to me is done, but I'll just run through quickly the changes on customs for 10 minutes and then we can conclude. Essentially in customs, I'm only going to talk about the legislation, not the tariff things, etc. Now the important thing, the philosophy is to look at exemption notifications. Review the exemption notification, revamp the exemption notification. On the one hand, the facilitation is towards to self-reliability, make in India concept, Atmanirbhar. But however, many cases, if you see the customs duty structure, it is not enabling that objectivity. There is a lot of distortion towards that objectivity. So there is a proposal that by October sometime, they are going to review all the existing exemption notification rates and restructure the rates to have this objectivity met. Wherever there is a distortion towards the imports rates and ultimately final consumption, whereas the final product is much more cheaper to obtain, etc., then they are going to change or modify the rates. The suggestion is any of your customers, your clients who are importing the goods and you feel that there is a distortion in the rate of taxes of the customs duty, which is adding to the cost as compared to the imported goods directly the finished products. So then you can always make a representation before October to the government. There you can get that rate change to meet that objective. Okay. Then they also said there are notifications or some customs notifications or conditional exemption notification. Wherever the conditional exemption notification will not take it to be a permanent one, will review every 2 years. Once a notification is issued, we will look at every 2 years whether it will require to continue or we need not. So unless specifically extended, that is going to come to an end after 2 years. So there is no necessity of issuing a notification to supersede any exemption notification. So they have said this in general. So all the importers have to keep watch on the type of exemptions they will be availing, how it affects whether a conditional exemption or unconditional exemption. If it is a conditional exemption, when was it issued and what is the deadline, and if it is going to lapse, what precautionary measures they have to take. All these aspects, all the importers should be keeping eye on and track the same. In fact, there is an amendment in the provisions of the Customs Act wherein time limit to complete the investigation issue of a notice is separate. Complete an investigation, they have put a time limit of 2 years. I think 2 years for investigation, in my understanding, is too longer time, but nevertheless, the initiation of a whatever the inquiry investigation. Moving towards the electronic era, in the GST also, there is a common portal, common customs electronic portal, which is proposed to be brought in. Presently, IceGate is there. They may want to replace or adopt that itself as a common portal. We have to wait and see. Now, all the assessment, etc., can be made through that. Since they will be doing that, you can file a bill of entry from your own place to avoid the interaction department, your CHA involvement. Now that, and also consequently, what they are trying to say is that to file a bill of entry 1 day before the arrival of the goods. So they are preponed so that they have a online when they already when they want to assess, it's available for customs officers. The bill of entry is available for them to assess. So before the arrival of goods, your bill of entry should be there so that they can identify and link that bill of entry and assess the goods. So in order to match that requirement, they have amended this provision as well. Wherever there is a fraudulent availment of any schemes, any refunds, they are going harsh on it, enabling that to be a violation of the custom law as well. Furthermore, if somebody is claiming a refund of the customs, refund of IGST through a fake credit invoice, they have said the penalty will be equal to 5 times the refund claim. There's a question of how can in the customs law there can be a provision relating to IGST, GST. We have to wait and see, because I understand that some people are saying that technically there is a lapse that cannot happen. We have to wait and see how it goes. Mode of service of the notice also, they have said that to common portal they can go ahead and issue the notice like a GST. One more changes, agricultural infrastructure and development cess. They have imposed, which all the products they have imposed this cess is equal, it is just a calculated customs duty only, and the value itself. Wherever they have imposed this, they have reduced the basic customs duty, so that the impact is not going to be on the ultimate customers. Then why they did all these things? As already been, it's no more a secret sort of a thing. Certain share of the BCD would have gone to the states. Being the cess, it will go completely to that particular fund. So it is nothing but a state's contribution to the center activity rather than from the assessees. So that is what the effect of this. One more thing, the changes made in the Central Sales Tax Act, where there was all these petroleum products when it was procured, C-form was being given and used in other GST supplies. The wordings in the CST law was not restricting that. So courts also came out and said that C-form can be issued in concession rate of goods, concession rate can be available. So now to overcome that, the CST Act also has been amended. The benefit is available only in case of a sale of that goods on which the sales tax is. I think before that, I also want to say there is one amendment relating to the anti-dumping duty and countervailing duties as well. As far as the anti-dumping duty and countervailing duties are concerned, they are imposing this countervailing duty and anti-dumping duty, where in spite of imposing that, what was the purpose through which that duty was imposed? So that the goods cost is going to increase, so that will deter the import. But practically what was happening on that, the cost of the anti-dumping duty was being borne by them. So ultimately the effect of that was not at all being felt. Still the imports were happening. So now there is a proposal to impose an additional anti-dumping duty on investigation being carried out, then after that period is over, still that is continuing. In addition to already anti-dumping duty which is being, the anti-dumping duty to the extent being observed will also be levied as anti-dumping duty. So that is one more changes which is that. I think hopefully I have covered all the important changes in the budget in the context of GST, customs. So I thank the Bangalore branch for giving this wonderful opportunity, and also I should thank Siddharth for coordinating for this program, and I should thank also the audience online as well as offline for patiently hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. As the outset, I take this opportunity on behalf of Bangalore branch to conclude today's program by rendering the formal vote of thanks. First of all, I would like to thank today's chief guest, Srimati R. Bhagya Devi, IRS Principal Commissioner of Customs and GST, and a special guest and speaker, Dr. Murali, Krishna, Additional Commissioner of State Taxes. I would also like to thank CATR Rajesh Kumar. A very wholehearted thanks to you, sir, for spending your valuable time and sharing your knowledge with all of us. Big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Very privileged to have your continuous support, sir. As a small gratitude, I'd like to present a small memento and request Raj to kindly come forward. Present a memento as a token of appreciation. Thank you, Sudha. Members, before I conclude, I would like to inform all of you, we have virtual CPE meeting with the FKCC at 4 o'clock today in the evening on the topics like amendments made by Finance Bill 2021 in respect of charitable religious trust on institutions by CA Dr. N. Suresh and changes in CSR amendments by CA Manohar P. Gupta, key recent amendments in FCRA 2010 by CA Krishna. I request all the members to kindly take part in it. Thank you. I request all the members to kindly raise for national.
ಬೇರೆ